Greetings Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live, from the Maverick News Network, World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Maverick News Channel. I know that some of you will not want to hear what has come out of the final report into foreign interference and the possibility of traitors in the Canadian government, but we're going to share it with you anyway. And I'm going to give you my honest assessment. And you might have an opportunity to weigh in on the conversation as well. I think we might have some time to go to the phones, so you'll have a chance to share your views and exercise your right to free speech right here tonight. There's also a new artificial intelligence weapon that is being used already by some countries, and it looks like it is being used by NATO, possibly, and it's scary. So we'll share that with you. And Donald Trump still saying that tariffs are on for Canada, regardless. And we have some politicians in the European Union who are so rattled by what Donald Trump is doing, so worried, so scared, that they are contemplating, or at least talking about, possibly sending troops to Greenland in response to Donald Trump's threat to purchase or take over Greenland. And he did say he wouldn't rule out the possibility of using military force. So there's that, and we have more, an update, maybe even a little bit of insight into the truth behind those drones that were spotted buzzing around, especially over places like New Jersey. So stay with me. We have a lot of ground to cover tonight, and you get to be part of the broadcast through the chat and through the call-in portion of the program. So don't go away. I'm going to share information with you that hopefully will get us all just a little bit closer to the truth right after this.
Greetings brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Maverick News. Expose lies and tell truth. The world is watching.
So I'm just going to go straight to the chat here, first of all, and ask a question. Do you want me to be honest with you tonight, or do you want me to just tell you what you want to hear? I'm serious. What do you want? Do you want me to sit here and build clicks and tell you what you want to hear? Or do you want me to just be honest and straight up? Let's go to the chat. Your choice. I can put on the performance like some other people who are out there building channels, or I can just give you an honest assessment. Who can handle the truth? Let's go to, I'm going to take a look in here. I have to go over to the Rumble chat. Who wants the truth tonight? The real truth, not the BS. Honesty always, says Canada Veritas. Honesty is always best. Yes, I agree. I agree. Okay, so truth always can be open to interpretation, I suppose, and assessment, perspective. But look, this report came out today on foreign interference, and I'm not going to name names of other streamers, but I've been watching some of the some other people, and just so predictably, they're just like dismissing it as corrupt, and you can't trust any of it, and they've turned something of real concern into a big nothing burger, blah, 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 blah. That's not really true. The report that came out today does identify really serious problems. And it acknowledges that. And here I should show you the report. First of all, I suppose. I had it queued up here. The thing that people are flipping out about, well, they're not flipping out. Some other streamers are just like, I knew instantly that they would just dismiss this as, you can't trust it, they're just lying to you, blah, 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 blah. They're not. This is why I did not name the names of the members of parliament when, some other people were inclined to start naming names. And it's because today, the report from the judge, which offers up 51 different recommendations. So this report from Justice Marie-Jose Hogue says that the conclusion is there are no traitors in Canadian Parliament, that none of these MPs are actually traitors. Now, that right there, that's what they're focusing on, in some other reports, where they're just instantly saying, see, it's all corrupt, can't trust them. But that's not the end of the story. You see, there are real problems that have been cited here, and there are ethical questions still to be answered. Why and how these members of parliament may have been influenced, or what kind of interference was present, whether they were, if they knew that they were being manipulated in some way, or if they were involved in some sort of foreign interference, it did not rise to the level of being a traitor, but there may have been ethical questions. So there's still things out there playing out that need to be addressed. I've got the video here from today's report. We're going to go through it and dissect it a bit. I'll give you my honest assessment. You're free to call in at some points during the program. We have a lot of other news to cover tonight, though, that I'd really like to get into because, man, every day right now is just so jam-packed with like heavy, serious, hard news because our world is changing so rapidly. But today, just to give you a quick snapshot, Justice Hogue released a comprehensive report with 51 recommendations. And the key points here are public awareness and education, okay? The recommendations include better communication about the threats of foreign interference to inform Canadians, possibly through a national hotline for reporting incidents. And she said today that the government has done a very bad job of communicating with the public on this issue. They've struggled with it because they're trying to balance a need to protect national security while at the same time keeping the public informed. And somewhere in the mix of all of this, the public is losing confidence in our institutions. And I totally understand. I've talked about it extensively here on the program. It's also, the report also focuses on election integrity. Proposals for legislative changes are in there to ensure only Canadian citizens or permanent residents can vote in party leadership contests and nominations, and for political parties to file their rules with Elections Canada. And that is something that has been highlighted during this process, which is just beginning again with the Liberal Party. That's a big problem. I've talked about that as well. That is something that needs to change. But you don't get change unless you get involved. People, I think, largely, especially on the freedom side, the conservative side, if you want to call it that, people have been sitting back waiting for this report or waiting for a shoe to drop so that they can they're just expecting, I think they expected the justice to come out today and just point the finger at Justin Trudeau and say, "You're a traitor," and then drag him out into the public square for a good old-fashioned you-know-what. Well, that ain't going to happen, and that's not what the heart of this issue is. And because it's complex, and because it isn't just that simple, that's why we're not getting what people have been sort of building up to. The report also focuses on the government's response, enhancing how information about foreign interference is shared within government, ensuring it reaches decision makers, and providing regular intelligence briefings to party leaders. Disinformation was cited by Justice Hogue today as one of the major components of this, a major concern that is having really profound and destructive effects on our democracy. And I agree, because it has gotten to the point where we simply don't know sometimes what's real and what isn't real on social media. And what's going on, especially on platforms like Twitter and TikTok, is information that is being distributed, pushed out to people, is not really information that is being offered up in a lot of cases in good faith. It's designed to mislead you. It's insidious. It is also something that we've seen mainstream media get caught in lies, and that has been enough to completely undermine their credibility in the eyes of many. But not everything mainstream media tells you is a lie. Unlike what Tucker Carlson tells you, everything they tell you is a lie. No, not everything they tell you is a lie. But during the pandemic, certainly they got caught telling us some lies, and that has undermined public confidence in media. And beyond that as well, it's undermined public confidence in all of our institutions. But the motivations behind that are key, and that's not to say that what you're seeing on social media is automatically, because it's contrary, it's automatically the truth. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that everything on social media is a lie, nor does it mean everything is the truth. And just because you have some independent streamer out there telling you something, it doesn't mean that they're being honest with you. And sometimes these people are being influenced or controlled even by foreign governments. So why would you trust some other government if you don't even trust your own? Like, why is that government more trustworthy than your government? They're all battling. There's a war on for your minds. That's the disinformation component of this, and it has been undermining our democracy. And yet, in spite of all that, we've had some resilience here. And a lot of this is being directed at diaspora communities. And the report calls for protections, the development of ways to protect communities from foreign intimidation and interference, including from countries like Iran, China, and Russia, because they're heavily involved in trying to manipulate information and to also target through a variety of means, including, I guess you would call them, these Chinese police stations, in a coercive manner, people from those diaspora communities. The report also calls for implementing changes from an act respecting countering foreign interference to modernize laws related to national security and criminal acts. So again, Justice Hogue has released this final report, and it provides a stark look into the challenges facing our democratic processes. The report, which comes with these 51 recommendations, it highlights several key areas for improvement. It looks at what the government has been doing poorly. It also does look at some things that it's done reasonably well. But overall, I think that it gets a failing grade on this because it has, again, under Justin Trudeau's watch, failed to serve the public properly or effectively, maybe is the better word, because it hasn't effectively communicated the information to the public, again, eroding public confidence in our institutions. But I think the report overall is probably pretty fair and accurate. And it suggests the establishment of a hotline for reporting foreign interference, emphasizing public awareness and education about these threats. There's also a strong push for legislative changes to safeguard our elections and ensure that only Canadian citizens and permanent residents participate in party leadership and nomination contests. It does not make sense. It is an affront to our sovereignty and our national security to allow people from other countries to participate in a process that can end up nominating and then selecting the person who could be our next prime minister. It's not right. And one of the critical points raised in the report is the need for better information sharing within government so that these agencies can interact properly and then have additional follow-up and not just handing information off in an ineffective way from one department to another, where it kind of gets lost in the mix. Justice Hogue also warns about the pervasive threat of disinformation, as I said, and that, again, comes back to these social media platforms, which is what I was talking about last night, even with Twitter, X, Facebook, and it goes both ways or all ways on the political front. Depending on which way the company that controls that social media platform leans politically, they can adjust their algorithms to manipulate public opinion in ways that you and I are not even aware of, and they're affecting how we think, what we perceive to be reality. They can actually, honestly, create a false reality and make it your reality simply by making you think that it's real. And what you think is real then becomes reality. Because, especially in terms of politics, which is a human construct to begin with, you can control how people view things and make that true if you choose to make it true. That's a very complex concept, but it drills down into this whole idea of like, what is real? Am I even? I think, therefore I am. But where politics is concerned, it's a very serious consideration, especially when you're in the matrix, essentially, when you're in the internet. And they can create this reality for you, for me, for everyone, for an entire country. Elon Musk has the power to manipulate elections, just like Mark Zuckerberg. And they do. And it's not as simple as simply dropping leaflets on an enemy from an airplane now. They have very sophisticated technology, including artificial intelligence, to get that job done. Make no mistake. Let's go to the video and let's start digging into this. And yeah, I mean, again, I can sit here and just... I can just do the old, oh, look, she's corrupt. She can't believe her. It's all Justin Trudeau and those liberals. And I'm not going to do that, because this is very serious. And if we really want to protect our democracy and we really want to fix these problems, then we need to deal with this on a plane of reality. And we need to look at this in a balanced and an honest way, and not give in to this temptation to just give you what you want so that you get emotional about it and you keep coming back for more of that adrenaline hit that you get when you're told that the world is coming to an end. I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm just not. I'm not participating in that crap. Let's go to the video here with Justice Hogue, and we're gonna rip into this and pick it apart.
Okay, piecemeal, underwhelming. Andrew, thank you. That's just an introduction to what we're going to hear from Justice Hogue. As you can see, she's now taken to the dais in the hearing room itself. Let's now take a listen to the Chief Commissioner for the Public Inquiry into Foreign Interference.
After 18 months of intense work,
That might be a euphemism.
and intense is even an understatement,
inform you.
I'm pleased to inform you that the Commission on Foreign Interference, over which I preside, submitted its final report to the Governor and Council today. The final report is available on the Commission's website, and I invite you to read it. You will notice that the report is composed of several volumes. I encourage those with a strong interest in our work to read the report in its entirety, as the individual chapters provide a wealth of detail and context that are important.
Let's go up to the English.
And assess the government elections.
Especially like to highlight the
First, I had to examine and evaluate foreign interference by state and non-state actors and its potential repercussions on the integrity of the last two federal general elections, the way in which related information about foreign interference circulated, and the measures taken in response to this information. Second, I was asked to examine and assess the government's ability to detect, deter, and counter foreign interference in democratic processes and institutions, and to make recommendations for strengthening Canada's protection against such interference. It is important to recall the nature of my mandate, as foreign interference goes far beyond what I was tasked to examine. Foreign interference can affect more than elections and democratic institutions.
Okay, look, that's the truth. And for those in the chat right now saying, what am I getting? So predictably, you think they're dealing with it through reality? Hell no, it's corruption at the highest level and we need to wake up ASAP. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. What did she just say? She just told you that the foreign interference goes far beyond what she was even tasked to look at. She's telling you there is a serious problem. But too many people just want to hear, Justin Trudeau's a traitor. Let's drag him into the public square. No, there's a serious problem, and she's telling you about it. But you're not hearing it because your mind is just wrapped around this whole, who do we blame? Who do we drag out? Who do we lynch? Get your head out of that. You can believe what you want to believe. This is pretty straight up stuff. We've got a serious problem, and she's telling you about it. But if you don't listen to her, you're just going to dismiss this whole thing, and you're going to miss an opportunity to deal with an affront, an attack on our country. Let's go back to her.
Just think of universities, scientific research, and private industry. Examining foreign interference in its entirety would have been...
And that's what she's telling you here, too. It's not just in government. It's in our universities, our schools, our corporations, our companies. It's all through our society. It's a serious bloody problem, and it's not limited to a few members of parliament, or even all 338, which is also not true. Get real.
A giant and almost impossible task, but that was not my mandate. Instead, in keeping with its mandate, the Commission conducted a thorough and rigorous examination of how foreign interference manifests itself in Canada's electoral processes and democratic institutions. At the outset of our work, I pledged that the Commission will carry out its mandate independently, impartially, fairly, and transparently. I will also add with rigor, proportionality, and speed. I believe it has done just that. La Commission devait être disciplinée si elle...
The Commission had to be disciplined in order to meet its deadline. Preliminary work was
We'll get back up
not
here
be
to the
discussed in
English.
public.
43 testimony and pursued its investigation.
Canadians. We then met dozens of... Those hearings were followed by 10 days.
We obtained access to tens of thousands of documents and conducted over 100 interviews. This led to further hearings during which I heard 143 testimonies over 12 days of in-camera hearings and 20 days of public hearings. I also had the benefit of meeting and hearing from over 100 citizens from various diaspora communities who have been victims of foreign interference, particularly transnational repression. They shared their experiences with me, allowing me to better understand the human impact of this scourge. Finally, nearly 40 experts helped me consider the best ways to conduct this battle. Now, what must we retain from the Commission's work? Firstly, that certain foreign states are attempting to interfere in our electoral processes and democratic institutions. This is not a new phenomenon, nor should it surprise us. States have been trying to interfere with each other since the dawn of time. What is new, however, are the means being deployed by these states, the extent to which the phenomenon seems to be taking hold, and the fact that it is being talked about publicly. That said, and it is one of my most important observations, our democratic institutions have remained robust in the face of attempted foreign interference.
I'm going to pause it there for a moment. She is making a very valid point. This is something that has been going on since the dawn of time, since countries became countries. And no, and I'm looking in here, and these comments again, guys. No, is it a kangaroo court? No, it's not a court at all. This was a commission designed to find facts and find information. Nobody's on trial here. This is a fact-finding mission. Kangaroo court? No, it's not a kangaroo court. I'm sorry, David, it just isn't. And I don't know what comment this is referring back to. It's a response to something, but yes, right, USA is foreign interference, that we accept what it is. What is it? All others not matter, living shadow of the beast, USA foreign interference. That's absolutely true. The U.S. does have heavy influence over what goes on here in Canada. And I would say under Trump, we're getting massive foreign influence right now, and even threats to our sovereignty from south of the border because of him. And they're involved in our politics up here. And this is not a court. So that's what people also are just confused about. Again, and this lady is not a politician. She's a judge tasked with heading up this fact-finding mission and issuing this report to help us understand what the problem is with foreign interference. That's the issue.
Although there are a very small number of situations where foreign interference may have had some impact on the outcome of a nomination contest or the result of an election in a given riding, foreign interference did not impact the outcome of the last two general elections.
So what does that mean? She's actually identifying a serious problem, acknowledging it, saying that in some electoral districts for some candidates, and I'm going to put a couple of words in her mouth here, but especially in electoral districts where you have diaspora communities, say a Chinese community or a community from India, a Sikh community, or an Iranian or Palestinian community, Chinese in particular, you're getting sometimes foreign influence and even money coming in to those into those ridings, influencing the outcomes of nomination processes in through which candidates are selected. And she's saying that something needs to be done to deal with that. She already dealt with the issue that is apparent in the current Liberal federal leadership race to replace Trudeau, where you're seeing foreign influence by allowing people from other countries who are not Canadian citizens to participate in the process and cast ballots. She's saying that has to stop. I agree. I've said that too. So we need to address that. I'll let her go on. But she's not saying there's no problem. She's saying there's a real problem. But she's drilling down and getting to the heart of the matter if you really listen to her, and if you go and read the report, which is available online. If instead of just sitting and bellyaching about it, go read it, educate yourself, find out what the real facts are. Don't take it from me. Don't take it from some other streamer. Don't take it from mainstream media. Just go read the report yourself and then assess it for what it is.
Although a few situations involving attempts to curry favor or develop problematic relationship with a parliamentarian have come to light, such phenomena remain marginal and so far appear to have been largely ineffective.
And that's right, Billy Mustang. I did work at CTV for like 25 years. And I'm old school. And I worked at CTV before all this kind of crap was going on. And I worked at television stations, radio stations. I worked in print media. I've done it all, my friend. I've been around the block more than one or two times. And I know the lay of the land. And I know what ethics are. And I aspire still to hit those, to live up to those to those standards, those journalistic standards, every night that I sit here. So you can sit there and criticize me, think that you're criticizing me because of my background, but I'm proud of what I've done in the past because I don't lie to people. I don't lie. And when it came down to brass tacks and moments of truth, I always stood up. And I sit in this chair every night and still try to bring people closer to the truth. That's what I do. What the hell have you done? I've got the experience. I've got the background. I know what I'm doing, and I'm not lying to people. And I'm not just going to sit here and generate clickbait and scare people.
Effective. Some may have benefited from the support of a foreign state, sometimes without knowing anything about it. But again, so far, this does not seem to have led to any real gains for the states involved. Nor have I seen any evidence to suggest that there are currently so-called traitors in Parliament. While I saw evidence of some concerning behavior, the evidence does not show any MPs plotting with foreign states against Canada's interests.
Okay, now that's where everybody's like, see, she's corrupt. No, that's why, while everybody was pressuring me to name names, I was like, no, I am not naming names until I get facts. I'm not going to accuse someone of being a traitor to their country unless I see absolute hard evidence and facts that they've crossed that line and have engaged in traitorous behavior. Illegal behavior. For me to sit in this chair, and I don't know where this leaves some other streamers out there who have named names, but if what these members of Parliament have done, if they haven't done anything illegal, but they've been accused of committing a crime, some people might end up in court and sued for everything they've got because it might just not be true. That being said, Justice Hogue is not letting them off the hook. She's not saying they didn't do anything wrong. Listen to what she said carefully. She's saying that some of the behavior is questionable. She's talking about ethics. Maybe they've crossed the line of ethics. Maybe they've done some stuff that does warrant having them kicked out of Parliament. But these are questions that still need to be explored and answered in more fullness over time. But she's not letting them off the hook. But what she's saying is it doesn't rise to the level of them being a traitor. And there are degrees of unethical behavior. In some cases, things are criminal. In some cases, it's just, you shouldn't really have done that. In some cases, it's enough to have you lose your job but not go to jail. So it depends on what they've done. And in many cases, it even came out where some of these members of Parliament were identified as being unwitting victims of foreign interference and had been manipulated unwittingly through what means I'm still not really sure, but their names were named, and it was clear from the assertions coming out from the reports prior to this even that they hadn't actually done anything illegal, and yet they were being called traitors. You can't do that, and it's not fair. Because if someone hasn't done something traitorous and I sit here and accuse them of being a traitor, I can destroy someone's life. Because they'll be marked as a traitor when they aren't actually a traitor. And in fact, maybe they're actually a victim of this foreign interference themselves, having fallen prey to it. And I've seen this going on. It's like, that MP is a traitor. No, I know from what was said prior to this that MP, and I'm not going to name the name, was an unwitting victim of foreign interference, in the same way that some media streamers out there who were sort of targeted and identified as maybe being engaged in the generation of content that would benefit foreign governments and being criticized for it, when in reality they were unwittingly being used by foreign governments, or just because they were critical of our own government in many ways, foreign governments were simply amplifying their voices or supporting them because they liked what they were saying. It didn't necessarily make them traitorous. In some cases, maybe foreign governments are pointing out legitimate things that require criticism of our government. And so they would amplify that because it serves their purpose. But it doesn't necessarily make those streamers witting participants or knowingly participating in the dissemination of disinformation. It's a little more complex than that, and a more nuanced assessment of this is necessary, rather than just sitting here and saying, they're all corrupt. Throw out the system, tear down the government. And I'll suggest this to you. Some of the people out there who are tonight engaging in that kind of rhetoric are probably either witting or unwitting participants in foreign interference themselves.
Alors maintenant, que faut-il retenir des travaux de la Commission?
What are the takeaways?
Let's
What must be being elected officials?
get back up here to the
Prevent
English.
and counter it.
Here we go.
Why? Above all, what I found is that the government has been
Means used. However, the government sometimes took too long to act, and coordination was not always optimal. The means used to communicate information to certain decision makers, including elected officials, proved imperfect. Sometimes, very much so, since certain documents never got to where they were supposed to go, and there seems to be no good reason why. But above all, I found that the government has been overall a poor communicator when it comes to foreign interference. La plupart des Canadiennes et des Canadiens ont
Most Canadians first learned about foreign interference through media reports, without the government being the source of the information communicated. This should not have been the case. The government needs to better inform the public, and it needs to be more
Let's
transparent.
get back up to the English.
This threat is all the more nefarious because the means available to counter it are limited and very difficult to implement. Nevertheless, we must
And I'm going to pause it again and look. See, that's not an accurate assessment. Look, folks, nothing to see here. That's not what she's saying. You just want to discredit her because you don't want people to listen. Or you're not able to listen. You can't handle truth. You just want what you want. Like, that's not what she's saying. She's not saying there's nothing to see here. She's saying there's a lot to see here and a lot to be concerned about. So you can either listen to her or choose not to, but she's focusing and drawing your attention to some pretty serious stuff.
not give up, but rather attack it forcefully altogether. This cannot be the sole purview of government. It will not work. Les acteurs étrangers ne se contentent plus d'utiliser
Foreign
the world are under attack. Foreign interference will never be completely eradicated, and it will always be necessary to counter it. This is even more true as the world changes and the world order seems to destabilize. Democracies around the world are under attack from all sides, and the technological resources available to malicious actors are multiplying. It will therefore be a never-ending battle. One of our society's greatest achievements is to have created a political and social order that give us the freedom to choose those who will represent us in government, the right to contribute to discussions about our future, and the chance to live in peace with one another. But protecting these achievements requires that all of society, including each and every one of us, contribute particularly to the war against mis and disinformation. L'une des plus grandes réussites de notre
And so
société.
she's telling you it's up to
One of
you
our
in
society's
part.
greatest achievements is each and every one of us our democracy.
Okay. So that's basically it. And again, here's the report itself. So go read it for yourself. And yeah, she did not take questions, but she's not a politician. She's a judge. And if you want to know what's in the report, as she said, it's all available online at foreigninterferencecommission.ca. And you can see here that it is pretty extensive, over 100 pages, and it's all laid out. So what she's saying is, with regard to, who's a traitor, being accused of being a traitor, that's a legal thing. And if it doesn't rise to that level, then they're not traitors. But it does. She's not saying that they didn't do something wrong, and that some of these politicians still maybe should be held to account. In fact, I think that she's pointing to that, saying yes, they've in some cases maybe engaged in unethical behavior, but that's not for her to pass judgment overall on it. She's drawing our attention to the problem through this report, but this is not a court of law. Now we take this information forward, the government, the opposition, you as an individual, we as a community, as a country, we can take this information forward and begin to do something constructive with it, make changes, get rid of these provisions that allow people who are not even Canadian citizens to participate in the process of selecting leaders for parties or even candidates for parties. Figure out what we need to do about all this money that's flowing in from foreign governments into our political system and try to put a cork in that. Reduce or find a way to stop coercion, like threats against candidates or potential candidates or people involved in political parties from foreign governments. Identify people who might be or are on the take in one way or another. Stop the flow of foreign money into political parties. There are a lot of things that come up with that dovetail over all of this, and she's identifying all of this for us, only kind of hitting on some of the highlighted points. 51 recommendations in the report. Go read them for yourself, and then let's get to work and do something about it. It's up to the government now, in one fashion or another, to take action on these 51 recommendations. It's up to Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives to hold the government to account. And it's up to the government still sitting, not in session, but the Liberal Party, as if they're in power, then they have to do something about it. And if Poilievre gets elected, it's up to him at that point to do something about all of this and change the rules that Elections Canada has for elections. So that's the real path forward in order to deal with this, in order to preserve our democracy and the integrity of our elections. And we have, a slightly different set of issues that we have to deal with here compared to what they're dealing with down in the States. So deal with it in a real way, or just think about chemtrails. Like it's up to you, man. Like, so that's the way it is. This is what's happened today. Now we've got reaction from some people here today. Who do we want to start with on the reaction side? Well, here, I'm going to just show you this. This is related, like what we were talking about last night. This is why what Justice Hogue is queuing in on here. Deep Seek. Talked about it last night. Chinese company, startup, right? In the U.S. today, U.S. Navy has banned Chinese AI DeepSeek over security risks. The U.S. Navy has issued an all-hands directive banning the use of DeepSeek, citing security and ethical concerns tied to its Chinese origins. And this is artificial intelligence that we're told was developed for a fraction of the cost when compared to what OpenAI and other AI companies in the United States have been doing, for a fraction of the cost. And because of the emergence of DeepSeek, NVIDIA, they crashed the price yesterday. $600 billion of market valuation gone from NVIDIA, a leading company in chips and the development of artificial intelligence on the U.S. side, where we just saw a news conference with Donald Trump just days ago announcing a plan to make and a project with a $500 billion investment to make the United States the leader in AI research. And then along comes DeepSeek just days later, just days. And all of that relates back to what Justice Hogue is really talking about. Therein lies one of the major threats to our civilization, our democracy, because that kind of technology, it's not just the skimming of data. It's not what they're stealing from you. Everyone's worried about having their data stolen. That's a legitimate concern, but it's also about what they're pumping out and how they're pumping it out. The algorithms, what information they're giving you, what information they're frankly feeding you and me, all of us. And beyond that, what information and content they're creating out of bits and bytes, completely artificial, and then pumping into our brains. That's disinformation. And the fake news that Donald Trump talks about all the time, this is the ultimate in fake news, fake information. And it's here now. You can create an entire reality for people online that they'll believe. This is part of it. So it's not just about a few MPs sitting in Parliament. That's part of the big issue here, who might be taking money or being influenced in some way, directly or indirectly, by some foreign interference. And, but it doesn't mean they're necessarily traitors. That's too simplistic. And that's not going, if you just take that tack, we're not going to deal with the real serious issues at hand here. Yeah, nobody seems to care about Elon Musk spending $270 million to weasel his way into the White House and buying Twitter and then turning that into an information powerhouse and a tool through which he's actually manipulating elections. If you don't think he's not, you got your head in the sand. It's Justin Trudeau's fault. It's all Justin Trudeau. Yeah, I know. F Trudeau, F Trudeau, F Trudeau, F... Oh, Jesus. There's a little more to it than that. Once Trudeau's gone, you just get the next liberal to hate. Okay? He's just the figurehead. and he's not the head of the snake. There's just a bigger problem at hand. So once he's gone, then the process starts again, and then you get to hate somebody new. That's the way it works. Unless you're on the other side, in which case you get to hate Pierre Poilievre. What's going on with Trump, though, that's pretty much unprecedented. What we've seen over the past week. Pretty weird stuff, I have to say. Pretty damn weird. Sorry, I'm a little off track here. Let's see if we can get you some reaction. Yeah, okay. Here. First of all, let's go to Jagmeet Singh, because we have him available. And he addresses this report. He also, strangely through this, seems to indicate that if there was another confidence vote today, he would still support Trudeau because of, I don't know, because everything's so I don't know, man. This is, again, weirdness. But let's listen to what he has to say about this.
New Westminster Burnaby. Thanks for joining us today. We want to talk about the recent report released by Justice Hogue. We know that foreign interference is something that's very serious, something that Canadians are worried about. We want to defend our democracy. We want to make sure that our democracy is free from foreign interference. We also want to make sure that everyday Canadians can live their lives without the threat or harassment of a foreign government. So we had called for this public inquiry. The Liberals had said no. We were the first political party to call for it, and now we've got the report. What Justice Hogue has highlighted, I think one of the biggest points that she made in her report was the deep concern she has regarding misinformation and disinformation, particularly on social media, and how we do not have tools right now to combat that, and it is rampant. The amount of misinformation that is available is rampant, and that is a serious concern for our democracy and for an upcoming election. And so that is a concern that was highlighted by Justice Hogue. I think that concern is also exacerbated by the leader of the Conservative Party's decisions and his actions. Pierre Poilievre has accepted the endorsement of Elon Musk, someone whose platform is also one of the worst actors in a lot of ways around misinformation and disinformation. Coupled with the fact that Pierre Poilievre also wants to defund a public broadcaster, which is a source of real information, journalistic integrity, really highlights a dangerous set of priorities given Justice Hogue's findings of misinformation and the need for fact checks and fact confirmation. What other things that Justice Hogue highlighted, I want to point out, is he said that all political leaders should get security clearance and receive information that is pertinent to their parties or to democracy in general. And that highlights the real concerns that Canadians have raised about Pierre Poilievre, the only leader of a political party that has not received security clearance. And so that was highlighted. And I think finally, Justice Hogue did raise concerns about sitting parliamentarians and questionable or concerning behavior. And I'll highlight, she said, of questionable ethics. And that is something in the context of foreign interference that I'm concerned by. Ultimately, what we want to see is now the recommendations that Justice Hogue has made be implemented. I've instructed my party, my national director and team, to follow all of the recommendations as it relates to political parties so that we're doing our part. I encourage other political leaders to do the same. Donc, on a reçu le rapport de justice.
Okay, so there's a start. I applaud that. He's going to follow the recommendations and make sure that his party lives up to that end of it. And the Grant Daniel says, why stick up for corruption, Rick? I'm not sticking up for corruption. That's an unfair accusation. In fact, quite the opposite. I'm saying if you want to deal with corruption, then deal with it in a real way. And corruption comes in many forms, but not necessarily through traitorous behavior or something that rises to the level of being a traitor, but you can still be corrupt and still be held accountable. And that's what we need to do now. We need to take this information and deal with these politicians in a realistic way, giving them their right to due process. If so charged with something, if they're charged with a crime, then they get to go through the legal system. And like any other politician, if they're caught with their hand in the cookie jar, or if they're corrupt in some way, then they're held accountable, then maybe they should lose their job. But let's get to work and find out what it is. Just because it's not traitorous behavior doesn't mean it's not unethical. It also doesn't mean that they haven't done something that might result in some sort of a charge, a different kind of charge laid against them. But until they get to that point, we have to just keep working through this process. And somebody said also, she said that foreign interference can never be fully stamped out. Why not? And that's just because foreign governments, all governments, are always trying to, and we've talked about this extensively on the program in the past, all governments are trying to interfere with other governments all the time. It's always been the case. It always will be the case. Yeah. Unless people are going to start engage, I'm going to stop entertaining these stupid comments because it's just brain damage. That's all it is, and people just being stupid. It's not helpful. So go ahead and just keep on with your idiotic comments and be the trolls that you want to be. I'm just not going to engage with you. You're lucky I don't ban your ass.
Okay, we're going to start with questions on site. We'll start with CTV.
Hi, Craig Krause with CTV News. In the report from Justice Hodge, you mentioned that there was some foreign interference, maybe not to the substantial amount that would affect the election, the past elections that we've had. Do you know of any ridings that you have an eye on that potentially are impacted by foreign interference?
I'm concerned with what Justice Hogue raised was that while it didn't, she concluded it did not impact the overall election, but there were specific races where there could have been an impact and it could have changed the decision or changed the result in specific ridings. Given what we've seen here in our province of BC, that an election can be determined by sometimes 1 or 2 seats, that to me is very concerning. I don't have a specific ridings that I'm concerned about at this point, but the idea that an election can be determined by just a couple of seats, and Justice Hogue conclusively said that there were a couple of ridings where there was evidence that foreign interference tipped the scale one way or the other. That to me highlights how important this work is.
And you mentioned misinformation and disinformation becoming a growing threat and something that's happened in the past as well. Do you have a couple of examples that you've seen that are concerning to you?
Yeah, we're seeing right now somewhat like an AI created misinformation about political leaders right now. You could go online and see different political leaders from parties. You can see me in a fake video trying to get people into a pyramid scheme, which is completely false and not true. But that's also being applied to other political leaders as well. It's something that Pierre Poilievre's included in one. I think all the leaders are impacted by that type of AI created video where it looks like it's actually the person speaking. There's a voice dubbed over. But that's an example of really concerning trends that we're seeing where it's people, their voices, or similar voices, their videos, and it could really easily make people think that that's the person. And I've heard people say that they were actually duped by these things. And so it's quite concerning that this is going on.
I'm going to go to Joe from City TV next.
Thanks for taking the time. And just with this report coming in, obviously there is some examples of foreign interference. Just how, in your opinion, does that affect public trust with the federal government?
That is another crucial part about this. When we talk about defending our democracy, one is we want to make sure that the vote itself, that people can vote and know that the vote matters. But there's also the public trust in the institution. We want to make sure people believe that their vote matters. And so there's a combination of factors. One is we want to make sure the system is free from interference. Then we want to make sure people trust the system. And I think the allegations of foreign interference add to maybe an existing cynicism that, does my vote even matter? Then you've got allegations of the foreign governments impacting the outcome of elections that could further erode people who say, well, why should I even vote? That's why it's crucial we take this seriously, why I'm taking it seriously as a leader, and why I encourage other parties to take it seriously. We want people to believe their vote counts, their vote matters, and it's free from foreign interference. We want more people to participate in our democracy, and to do that, we need to restore more confidence in it.
And yeah, thank you. You mentioned Elon Musk and the misinformation there. Are you specifically referencing the platform X? And do you, as a political leader, think about taking your party off that platform and venturing out into others? And how are you going to combat misinformation going forward?
I am specifically raising concerns about Elon Musk's platform. There's absolutely massive amounts of misinformation on it. Just open up the app and look through it, and you'll see multiple examples. And I'm particularly raising that concern because we've got a Canadian leader who's accepted the endorsement of Elon Musk, someone who not only has a platform of massive misinformation, but is also a part of an administration that's threatened our country, literally threatened Canada, threatened Canadian jobs and Canadian workers. And we have a conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, who said that he's a great guy in response to whether or not he accepts that endorsement. I think that's problematic. And it's also problematic when we've got someone like Pierre Poilievre who attacks the media, attacks the independent journalism, attacks the public broadcaster. We actually need more independent journalism. We need more public journalism, and we need more high quality journalists that fact check, that confirm information. That's what we need more of. And he is questioning that, attacking that, and reducing confidence in what is a source of good information. So that's why I raise that concern. Elon Musk and Pierre Poilievre contributing to the distrust and more misinformation. It's troubling to me.
We're going to go to global next.
Question for my colleagues in Ottawa. If Trump follows through on his plan with tariffs, would you keep the Liberals in power and allow for the passage of a work relief program before supporting a non-confidence motion?
I'll just start off by the fact that I've spoken with a lot of workers who are deeply worried about what the Trump tariffs might mean. They say, sometimes I lay awake at night saying, if that tariff goes through, do I lose my job? And what's going to happen to my kids? What's going to happen to my family? And when we think about the analysis that's out there, if those Trump tariffs come in place, there are hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs at risk. Think about what that means for those workers, hundreds of thousands of workers, for their families, for those communities. This could be devastating for our country. So we do need to have a plan in place to support those that are impacted, those businesses, those workers, most importantly. I have not had any conversations with other opposition leaders. I think we need to come together to have a discussion about what is the best way forward. I've not had any discussions with the government related to this. If there is any desire to move forward, the government should call us together, like we did during COVID, and discuss a plan that supports workers. We, as a party of working people, a party founded by workers, want to make sure that there's a plan in place for workers. It's why we said from the beginning, EI is clearly not up to the task. During the pandemic, we realized EI does not cover the majority of Canadian workers. We called for changes to happen to EI so that we would be better prepared if something happens again that disrupts our economy. The Liberals did not listen. And so we are now in this position where we have an insufficient EI, the threat of tariffs, and many workers lying awake at night saying, am I going to lose my job or not? So I hope that there's a plan moving forward.
Okay, we're going to go to questions on Zoom.
Nous allons maintenant prendre les questions sur Zoom. On va commencer avec Laurence Martin pour Radio-Canada. C'est à vous.
Okay, that's enough of that. Let's take a little break. We'll come back with more. Stay with me.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
You know, it really it's about a show. In many respects, it's you talk about foreign interference and misinformation, disinformation. It's PR, it's marketing, it's convincing you to buy now, vote this way, support this, believe that. You know, Jagmeet Singh, as much as he's addressing serious issues here, he's also politicizing this. And here we are with this coming out from Jagmeet Singh, on just to give you like a more accurate perspective on, you know, what he's saying and better context. He is politicizing it. He just posted this today after coming out and addressing this through this news conference. This is like an ad style video, all centered around today's report.
The Prime Minister needs to come clean with all the facts. We need to know all of the evidence possible.
We needed to see some evidence.
I think we need to see more facts. Prime Minister hasn't provided any facts.
No evidence presented, politically motivated. Let me see what the concrete evidence she is talking about. As far as I'm concerned,
we need to have the evidence.
I need to know what are the evidence that you have so that I go prepared.
Canada has provided credible, irrefutable evidence of ties between agents of the government of India and a murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil.
I love our country. I love our democracy. I would do anything to protect it. I can't imagine or understand any political leader who wouldn't also do anything to protect our country. It troubles me deeply that Pierre Poilievre is unwilling to receive security clearance and to fully understand what's going on.
I would have to have more evidence to make a judgment on that.
Does that sound like a leader that's taking this seriously? It doesn't sound like someone who cares. You've got these serious allegations that a foreign government literally hired gangs in Canada to go out and shoot up people's homes and people's businesses. Canadians' lives are put at risk. Does that sound like the response of a leader who's taking it seriously?
And you know, it's just not simple, because to understand what Jagmeet Singh is really getting at there, you need to understand that revolves around the Khalistani separatist issue. This is all politics out of India that is being played out inside Canada. It connects back down to Trump. I'm sure that probably 99% of the people in the chat tonight, and I'll go back there and just look in again briefly. Most people, I don't know if too many people even have even an inkling, unless you're part of the Indian diaspora in Canada, either the Hindu or the Sikh communities, if you even understand what's going on there. And so at what point does the overlay of politics from India become an issue of foreign interference? And at what point is it legal, illegal? How much, impact is this all having? This is it. Just I can't. That's a whole other ball of wax, and I know that most people don't even have the beginning of an understanding of what that's about. Sikhs, Hindus, whatever. I think, for a lot of people who are, it's you get fixated on his turban and you think that he's a Palestinian. It's just back to the issue at hand. The point is, all the parties politicize things, right? Politicians. They're not really even interested in getting you to the truth. They just want to win the election. So they're going to use this, as he just did, for political purposes. So you're not going to find real truth there necessarily, but nuggets of it, maybe on all sides. Let me see if I've got, here we are. Here's the leader of the Bloc Québécois, Yves-François Blanchet, also dealing with this tonight. Bring him up on screen for you. We'll just take a brief clip from him. I think he's queued up and ready to rock. Here we go.
By useful idiots, and do you think such MPs should be thrown out of Parliament?
Useful idiot is an expression which, thanks God, I did not create. It is used by those in the intelligence services who describe people who unknowingly are being manipulated through soft spying initiatives, having a drink tonight with a beautiful lady, or being received in a much larger room than what you needed when you traveled around the world, or whatever like that, which makes one too comfortable and available or inclined to speak too much, to help people who shouldn't be helped. They are called useful idiots, and they are not criminals. They are somewhat idiots. We have to protect ourselves against those who are a danger. Either they do it purposefully or not. This is why Mr. Poiliev should get the security clearance and make sure, contrary to what has been read and said, make sure that there is no one in his caucus or within his candidates whom should be described as somewhat useful, if not idiot.
Get your thoughts on something else. There's talk today of the government presenting a bailout package for people affected by tariffs, by American tariffs. Would you support the government in the House of Commons if they were to present such a thing?
I see no way I would support any astuce of the government. I suggest, I believe that the intention would be to create a context in which the government would get 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they remain there longer than supposed, through hell in terms of parliamentary work. If the Liberals want things to become clear and want to help people, they should simply start the election sooner. Nothing prevents Mr. Carney or Mrs. Freeland, when this person is selected as the leader of the Liberals, to say on March 10th that we are going into election. We have improved the situation by 2 weeks, but I'm not getting into any tricks.
Même s'il faut aider les travailleurs de l'aluminium au Saguenay, par exemple, vous voteriez contre.
Avant que les...
Okay, enough of Mr. Blanchet for tonight. But again, he's zeroing in on some of the age-old tactics used by foreign governments to extract information and manipulate politicians. You know, a beautiful lady and a midnight drink. and she turns out to be a spy. That's old school. But we've got much more sophisticated things being done today to compromise the integrity of our political system. Anyway, I think it's time for us to move on because I want to talk to you about some of the other major stories tonight before we give you guys a chance to call in. Drones, New Jersey drones, news conference, White House today. The new Trump press secretary right off the top addressing the questions of drones over New Jersey and giving us something of an explanation. It only took the government 2 months to deliver this info. Why it didn't come out sooner, I don't know.
And before I turn to questions, I do have news directly from the President of the United States that was just shared with me in the Oval Office. From President Trump directly, an update on the New Jersey drones. After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy.
And after a while, it was like every light in the sky, every airplane was a drone or some sort of an alien spacecraft. Yeah, I know. But isn't it strange how it all sort of just stopped as soon as the election came to an end? That's because it wasn't about the drones in the sky. It was about the online coverage through social media. That's what it was about. It was just more and more talk about things that kind of drive people crazy. That's what it was, man. That's what it was. All right. Love you, Billy Mustang, whoever you are. I don't know. What's Billy Mustang? Is that your real name? You're in there all the time. I'm glad you're here watching. I don't know. Keep it coming. Jim Acosta. CNN. No more. Apparently he's out. And announced so on air today. He's gonzo. Not my favorite guy. I don't like his style. He had those heavy-duty confrontations with Trump during his first administration in particular. I'm sure you recall. Here he is.
It is never a good time to bow down to a tyrant. I've always believed it's the job of the press to hold power to account. I've always tried to do that here at CNN, and I plan on doing all of that in the future. One final message. Don't give in to the lies. Don't give in to the fear. Hold on to the truth and to hope. Even if you have to get out your phone, record that message. I will not give in to the lies. I will not give in to the fear. Post it on your social media so people can hear from you too. I'll have more to say about my plans in the coming days, but until then, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. It has been an honor to be welcomed into your home for all these years. That's the news. Reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta.
Cue the news music. So yeah, he announced his departure from CNN after nearly 18 years. Yep. This follows a decision by CNN to move his 10 a.m. show to a midnight time slot. And this change was part of a broader reshuffling of CNN's programming lineup, where his slot was to be replaced by The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer and Pamela Brown. Acosta, who had a reputation, I guess, for being a vocal critic of President Trump, declined the offer rather, from CNN to host that late night show. It indicates his disagreement with the move and chose instead to leave CNN altogether. His departure is being framed by Acosta himself as a stand against bending to pressure or tyranny, echoing his experiences as a son of a Cuban refugee and his journalistic philosophy of holding power accountable. So I guess what he's suggesting here is that somehow the Trump administration maybe exerted some pressure on CNN to have him repositioned from his morning slot to the midnight slot on CNN. A time slot where you have a far smaller available audience because people are asleep. Let's put them on when nobody's awake. That'll satisfy Trump, if indeed that is even what happened. But it wouldn't surprise me, even as Trump was signing executive orders saying that free speech is back. I don't know if that's really going to end up being the case. Assaults on free speech come in different forms. It's not just straight up censorship. Sometimes it isn't always apparent. Yeah, Trump is all for free speech. Yeah, sure he is. We'll see. We'll see. Remember we were talking about NVIDIA? Or I was, just a short time ago. What are we getting from Trump today? He's going after Taiwan now. Taiwan. Is there any country he's not going to go after with tariffs? Now he's threatening to put tariffs on on semiconductors coming from Taiwan. Again, to me, this blows my mind. Let's play the clip. This was actually from yesterday.
Particularly in the very near future, we're going to be placing tariffs on foreign production of computer chips, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals to return production of these essential goods to the United States of America. They left us and they went to Taiwan, which is about 98% of the chip business, by the way. And we want them to come back. And we don't want to give them billions of dollars like this ridiculous program that Biden has. Give everybody billions of dollars. They already have billions of dollars. They've got nothing but money, Joe. They didn't need money. They needed an incentive. And the incentive is going to be they're not going to want to pay a 25, 50, or even 100% tax. They're going to build their factory with their own money. We don't have to give them money. They're going to come in because it's good for them to come in. They're giving them money. They don't even know what they're going to do with it. I had people tell me, we have no idea. We didn't need money. They don't know if they're probably going to use the money to build in other places, other countries. It's a ridiculous plan, very expensive and ridiculous. The only way you'll get out of this is to build your plant. If you want to stop paying the taxes or the tariffs, you have to build your plant right here in America. That's what's going to happen at record levels. We're going to have more plants built in the next short period of time than anybody ever envisioned before, because the incentive is going to be there, because they have no tariff whatsoever. In fact, they have help from us if they build their plant in America.
Well, yeah, that may come to pass. And ultimately, as I've said right here, this is what people miss. That is what tariffs are really about. It's not about collecting the tariff to be used properly. What she's trying to do here is to use them properly. You're trying to repatriate or to bring in more manufacturing, more jobs, because to get around the tariff, the solution is to just put the plant inside the United States so it's produced domestically within the U.S. No more tariff. You just make it in the USA. Otherwise, you got to pay 25%. Or you don't, but the importer does, and then the product becomes unaffordable. The problem here is that Taiwan has developed the chip industry, and the United States is reliant on those chips. And at least in the short term, depending on how that rolls out, this could precipitate another massive chip shortage, which we just went through during the pandemic. The auto industry was crippled because of it. You remember all the auto factories and the auto companies had vehicles sitting in fields in storage waiting for chips to show up because they couldn't put the computers in the vehicles to make them run because they couldn't get chips from Taiwan because the United States doesn't have enough chip manufacturing capacity. So if he's going to slap a 25% tariff on, you better make sure that you've got some source for those chips, or you're going to cripple your auto industry and your defense industry and a lot of other industries. If you get that reckless about it, you could destroy your own economy like that. It's one thing to repatriate jobs. It's something again to do it in a manner that actually could undermine your own economy. And here he is actually picking a fight with Taiwan in a way, which is an ally of the U.S. right now, standing against basically what he says is his biggest adversary, China. And yet this is like doing China a favor. And yeah, Biden did have the, what did he call it? The Chips and the Something Act. And that was being used to bring back computer chip manufacturing to the United States. Some of it has come back already. And that's another way of doing it because he was providing grants and subsidies. You don't necessarily have to do it that way either, though. You can use other means in order to provide incentives for companies to come to your country through less regulation, training grants, or you could just lower taxes to become more competitive. Make your country competitive again, not just a bully. Right? There are reasons why these companies move their manufacturing offshore. It's because the costs of production were much lower. That's why. And they had the infrastructure, the manufacturing expertise in those countries, and the United States lost the ability to produce chips. That's why under the Biden administration, after the pandemic, and what happened, especially to the auto industry, shortage of chips, they were like, oh, we're vulnerable. We need to bring manufacturing back. Totally agree with that, but you don't need to beat up your allies in order to do it. And this is also what I think people are losing sight of here. I'm sure that the people working behind the scenes and even the politicians themselves are aware that what Trump is really after here in many respects is not so much even the oil out in Alberta. He wants the auto industry. That's what the 25% tariffs are about. And he also wants access to the Canadian market for milk and dairy and agricultural products that he wants to ship up here to Canada. It's all of these things that were dealt with through the North American Free Trade Agreement and then later the USMCA, or CUSMA, as we call it here in Canada sometimes. And it is about the auto industry. He wants to put those auto plants that we have here in Ontario, he wants those back in the USA. He wants those jobs. He doesn't care about Canada, doesn't care about you, doesn't care about me. And he is. I mean, and by taking this stance on things in such an aggressive way, he is being viewed by many around the world right now as a bully. And even though people are engaging with him to negotiate, because the United States is Godzilla, economically, militarily, this threat against Greenland, I'm going to take over Greenland after I finish taking over the Panama Canal again and annexing Canada, then Greenland. Maybe we'll do Greenland first. And I'm not ruling out military intervention. I might even send troops up there. Yeah, I might do that. Well, some politicians, leaders in the European Union, are taking note of this because that is actually a direct threat. And Denmark has said, no, it's not for sale. And Trump is like, I'm not taking no for an answer. And so they're actually, I can't believe I'm showing you this, but as a result of Trump's threats, you have some politicians in Europe saying that they're considering maybe even deploying European troops to Greenland to help Denmark defend Greenland against the United States. It's a real thing. I never thought I'd see the day. Danish Prime Minister is overseeing a cash dump to beef up the country's Arctic military presence. So they're putting money up there. And it's actually, they're actually talking about this. Blows my mind. What? No need for this. None. None. It's damaging relationships. It's damaging the United States more than it's helping it because it's undermining trust and confidence. No country is going to look at the United States the same, regardless of who the president is in the future. With this happening right now, people are going to say, don't trust him. Even Canada. Yeah, we'll negotiate. We'll do what we have to do to survive, I guess. And some people are ready to join already. We've talked about that, but Canada already looking at where else can we sell our stuff around the world. We can't rely on these guys because they just elected this guy and he's attacking us and we're his friend. It's very destabilizing. And well, people are going to sit across that negotiating table with Trump and smile to his face and maybe even bend the knee and capitulate in the short term. In the long run, the relationship forever changed between the United States and virtually every other country on the face of the earth now. It's not good. There are ways of dealing with people. There are ways of being, this is not diplomatic. And that's the problem. There's no diplomacy here. This is just coming in and beating things to death with a sledgehammer. Even if he doesn't mean it, doesn't he? Says he does. The immigration thing, still ongoing. And, you know, the more I look at this, the more I see that this also is a bloody show. It's all PR. It's all it's all designed for the cameras, for TV. It is it's reality television is what we're getting from Trump. This is like the WWE mixed in with The Apprentice and some real-time, real politics. He's this whole thing, they're talking now about ramping up the number of migrants that they arrest every day to at least 12 or 1,300. And yesterday, of course, we showed you that video of Selena Gomez melting down, crying, which was pretty freaking dramatic, honestly, but it is what it is. We'll maybe talk a little bit about that more in a moment. But here, I mean, look at this. And this is what I'm saying. This is all, I'm not even sure if the scale or proportion that we're thinking we're getting on all these raids and things is really even accurate. I was trying to look up some numbers on total numbers of people deported under Biden, the Biden administration, and it fluctuated quite a bit. And so far, there isn't really that much of a difference between what was going on with Biden as president and what's going on with Trump right now. It's just that we're actually seeing more of this, or we're seeing this happen in real time. But, you know, you're only getting, like, they deport a lot at the border every day, right at the U.S.-Mexico border. And then but proportionally, there isn't really that many more. It's just that we're seeing it more, and he wants you to see it. And that's why he told the ICE, well, he didn't, but all the ICE agents were told, be camera ready when you're out affecting these raids and arrests. The reason for that is, I think, twofold. One, it's because they want to try to put a proper spin on this for the public, and two, it's so that they mitigate any negative media they're getting. And two, it's also because this is all being done as a photo op for the media, both mainstream and social, because they're trying to control the messaging and the narrative by getting out in front of any information that's going out there. And so, yeah, this is all made for TV, man.
In major U.S. cities, immigration raids unfolded in moments that seemed made for TV.
Made for TV.
Donald Trump's border czar and talk show host Dr. Phil McGraw joined federal agents on the front lines, while the president took an early victory lap.
We immediately halted all illegal entry and began sending every border trespasser and violator back to the places from which they came.
It's all meant to send a message about Trump's hardline stance. Images provided by the U.S. government show use of military planes for deportation flights instead of commercial aircraft, which had been used under President Biden.
Sending military planes was the most extreme example of showing that the new sheriff is in town. And
yeah, I mean, it's happening and it's a real thing, but it's also a show. It's sending a political message to other countries, but it's mostly directed at you, so that you're getting a particular spin on this, and so that your perception of it is framed in a particular way. The proof will be in the pudding. Will this continue at the levels that he has suggested? I think they said that they're going to deport like 19 million. I don't know if that's maybe over 4 years. I don't know. But if you're only arresting 1,200 a day to get to 19 million, you better step it up a little bit there, boys. So I'm not sure that the numbers really jive, but it sure seems like you're getting a lot when you get this amplified message on television, social media, and they take videographers along for the ride to make sure that they get the images the way that they want them to have them. And I've been on those media excursions myself many times. I know exactly what they're doing there because I've been there with police and even military in the past. I know how that works. That's government. And they say, yeah, come on in. We're going to credential you. You come in. We're going to give you full access over there. You know, I've been on drug raids. I've been shooting stuff. I've been on military exercises. I know how that stuff works. And you go there because they give you access to that. It's the same thing in a war zone. If they give you access, you go with them. They give you go here, you go there. If you go with the military, if you go with the government people. And that's what you're seeing on television and on social media right now. So keep that in mind when you're watching this stuff, to just kind of keep it in perspective and proper context. Not saying that it isn't true necessarily, but you have to have a proper perspective on it, right? What else we got happening here tonight? Oh, yeah, RFK Jr. Caroline Kennedy slammed RFK Jr. as a predator before his confirmation hearing. And pretty wicked stuff. I mean, I've kind of lost my faith in this guy too. And here's, yeah, this is Caroline Kennedy, RFK Jr.'s cousin, calling RFK Jr. a predator. She sent a letter to these lawmakers ahead of RFK Jr.'s Senate confirmation hearing. And in this letter, she goes on and she says, I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together. Quote, it's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets because he himself is a predator. She goes on and says that her family members followed RFK Jr. down the path of drug addiction. We know he did have, or whatever, a heroin problem. She says here, quote, his basement, his garage, and his dorm room were the centers of the action where drugs were available, and he enjoyed showing off how he put baby chickens and mice in the blender to feed his hawks. It was often a perverse scene of despair and violence. She also accused RFK Jr. of being, quote, addicted to attention and power, saying, quote, he preys on the desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own children while building a following by hypocritically discouraging other parents from vaccinating theirs. So she's saying he got his kids vaxxed while telling other people not to do it. True? Assess for yourself. Caroline Kennedy goes on and says in this letter that he's continuing to grandstand off my father's assassination and that of his own father. And she says that her dad, John F. Kennedy, would have been disgusted by RFK Jr.'s actions. Pretty heavy-duty accusations. Just going to cue this. And let's run a little bit of this for all of us to see. This is ABC, just with the clip from her. Bring it up. Here we go.
Robert Kennedy Jr.'s confirmation hearing tomorrow to become the Secretary of Health and Human Services. His cousin, the daughter of former President John F. Kennedy Jr., Caroline Kennedy, speaking out against the nomination, calling her cousin a predator and urging the Senate to reject his nomination.
I've known Bobby my whole life. We grew up together. It's no surprise that he keeps birds of prey as pets, because Bobby himself is a predator. I urge the Senate to reject his nomination.
Yeah, you know, you often can learn a lot about somebody from the way they treat animals. So they say. And, yeah, even I would not take a baby chicken, a living baby chicken, and put it in a blender. True? It's an accusation. It's out there. And we know his drug addictions were true, were for sure. Which, even for me, right there, that becomes a question that really needs to be addressed before someone were to become president of the United States. A former heroin addict. What if they fall off the wagon? Just saying. Pierre Poilievre yesterday at the Holocaust Museum, marking the ceremony there. Going to bring him up here. He was talking about immigration and his thoughts on deportations, Canadian style.
On our own streets, we see on our own streets anti-Semitism, guided by obscene, woke ideologies that have led to an explosion in hate crimes. Hate crimes were up over 100% in Canada before October 7th. Now they're up 251%, with Jews being the principal victims of those crimes. We must not just condemn these things, we must take action against them. We must deport from our country any temporary resident that is here on a permit or a visa that is carrying out violence or hate crimes on our soil. We see on our own streets.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of, shall I say, anti-Semitic stuff online over the last 24 hours. because yesterday marked the liberation of Auschwitz, 80th anniversary. And a lot of videos like that too. And Trudeau was over, where was he yesterday? I think he went to Auschwitz. Yeah, he was there for, to mark that occasion. He was speaking with Holocaust survivors, and then Polyev went to the Holocaust Museum in Canada. Let me take a little break, come back. We've got more. I need to cue a couple of things up for you. Don't go away.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So the controversy surrounding Selena Gomez's video where it went viral. She was crying and upset about what Trump is doing with all these deportations. I'll play it for you again. She took it down, but it's, of course, what you put out on the internet tends to stay on the internet forever in one form or another, and here it is again, just so we can segue into the response today.
I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry. All my people are getting attacked. The children. I don't understand. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything, I promise.
Real or acting, whatever. I can tell you this though, I'm not going to sit here and beat her up. Enough people doing that. She's just had an onslaught of backlash. And here's this U.S. politician, Sam Parker. He responded, got involved, and posted, deport Selena Gomez. Show you, and then this online fight erupted, and here's the latest response. Selena Gomez responded to Sam Parker saying that Selena Gomez should be deported, and Selena Gomez said, "Oh, Mr. Parker, thanks for the laugh and the threat." And it gets messier and messier, day by day. And we just got this news in. An F-35 jet has crashed at Eielson Air Force Base near Fairbanks, Alaska. It happened this afternoon. Confirmed by U.S. military. Pilot's not hurt. Transported to Bassett Army Hospital for evaluation. Emergency crews blocked off the runway so that an investigation can commence, and officials there are urging the public not to stop on nearby highways. The cause is, as I say, under investigation. And one of those F-35s, fifth-generation fighter, super sophisticated, $81 million. That's the price tag. So that's what just went up in flames. We've got video. Here it is. Whoa. There's the pilot coming down safely. One more time. I wonder what the heck went wrong. Well, there goes $81 million. To put things in perspective, too, you know, that crash of NVIDIA yesterday, losing $600 billion in one day in market value. How much money is that? People are complaining about money being sent to Ukraine. All of NATO, not just the United States, all the NATO countries in total, so far, over 3 years, the price tag for NATO, $200 billion. $200 billion. In one day, NVIDIA stock, $600 in value, gone because of the emergence of DeepSeek from China. And just the turmoil that caused. I'm just going to look up and see what's happened. See what happened with it. Yeah, so it's bounced back. Here we go. What do we know about it today? Massive, massive shift. So bounced back strongly today, following yesterday's DeepSeek-related sell-off. Wiped out $589 billion in market value. And NVIDIA closed up today 8.8%. So it still hasn't recovered to its previous price, but up 8.8. So it's being graded as a strong buy following yesterday's sell-off. So there's still confidence in the company. Maybe as quite as often the case with stocks, when you get something like that happening, you get an overreaction from the market. And that's kind of where we're at tonight. So, you guys want to go to the phones here tonight or not? We're at the top of the hour. I'll just go to the chat if you want to. I'll put the number up on the screen. You tell me. Well, I guess we'll know if we start getting phone calls. If you want to weigh in on any of this stuff, as long as you're going to call in with constructive comments, I'm open to it. There's the number on the screen, 1519-401-1373. I'll just see what the reaction is over here on Rumble. There we are. Yeah, Stoic Teacher says, hard to fathom even $1 billion. I know, like, it's mind-blowing, isn't it? Isn't that crazy amount of money? Like, that's over $500 billion. One company, one day, gone in value. That's what crashes markets. But, and that wasn't the only company, wasn't the only tech firm affected by all of that. Okay, I'm just going to run a little promo here. just get things kind of cranked up. And I will see you guys on the other side of this. Don't go away.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, Mavericks, it's call-in time. Join the conversation. Call now, 1-519-401-1373. One 519-401-1373. Exercise your right to free speech. That's 1-519-401-1373. That's 1-519-401-1373. Maverick News. Call now. The world is watching and listening to you. All right, yeah, and you can join the conversation at 1-519-401-1373. And if you are so inclined, you can support what we're doing. Help us out. It's getting near the end of the month. We have bills to cover. Let's see who's on the line. First caller of the night.
Hello.
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 Hi. Hi, Rick.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. This is Michelle from All Sorts in the chat. Rick, I love watching your shows, and I really respect you. But respectfully, I want to bring up something you said a little while ago about the people in the chat.
Yep.
And hey, look, Rick, this is your show, right? Your show, your rules. But it, you said a comment about, people in the chat not knowing anything. Now, look.
What did I say? Did I say that?
It was in regards to Khalistan and those issues. It was a while back in the show, and
yeah.
I guess Rick, people in your chat come from all walks of life.
That's right.
My grandfather was in India during partition.
Sure.
And I guess I felt, when you said that, Rick, I thought, gee, there's a lot of people in this chat. Some of us have history, in these regions. And I just wanted to say, it kind of upset me a little.
Well, I can understand that. And let me just qualify that a little bit more for you. All I'm saying is these are complicated topics. There's a lot of history. And I just think that Canadians in general, we don't even know our own history adequately. And so to fully understand what's at play here, I would say most Canadians don't are not fully educated, and so it's hard to understand. Wasn't being critical. I'm just saying that it's very hard to sit here and have conversations with people, or even talk to myself, and make sure that I'm covering these things in a way that people can understand, or that any of us can even understand what's going on with all this stuff in the background, when we don't even really know what the, I think a lot of people don't fully understand the issues that Jagmeet Singh is involved with. That I don't fully understand. Like, we used to have Raj, right, who was on the program, Raj Sehgal. And so I would turn to him.
I remember,
When it would come
a long time ago.
when it would come to these issues, I would turn to him. But he hasn't been around for a while. He's got other stuff that he's doing with his paralegal practice, and he's the president of the Ontario Paralegal Association now. So I don't have him as a resource. But on these issues from India, I would go to him, because he's the expert. I'm not an expert on this stuff out of India. It's hard to follow this stuff. That's all I'm saying.
I don't. Yeah, no, and I respect that. I just wanted to, I wanted to address that, because I really love watching your show, Rick, and I find the people in the chat, they're a good bunch, but I don't know a lot about India. And I read this book once. Now, this doesn't explain Khalistan, but it does give history. There's a book by an author named Rohinton Mistry, and it's called A Fine Balance. And I actually read that before I found out information about my grandfather. Like, I did hear he was in India, probably when I was young, and I didn't really grasp it. But I read this book, and then I ended up looking into family history and such. And actually, a lot of what I read in this book kind of made sense to me once I looked into the family history. But yeah, like, what can I say? I don't know a lot about Khalistan. I know it's in the northern part, I believe. It's the Punjab, right?
Well, it's the Khalistan it's like a separatist movement, and it goes back to the Amritsar massacre and British colonial rule that goes all the way back to that time, and the assassination of Indira Gandhi, and then there was a 3-day massacre that occurred after that, where Sikhs were massacred by the Hindus, who were basically kind of backing the government, and then from that, there's just been bad blood since, and there's this Khalistani separatist movement that has emerged over time. And actually, the Khalistani separatist movement, it's really more active outside of India than it is even in India, and it's very active in Canada because we have such a large Indian diaspora here. And then you've got the Indian government classifying the Khalistani separatists as terrorists, and then Trudeau is and Jagmeet Singh allowing those people to come here and enjoy the protections of the Canadian government while having dual citizenship. And then you see these conflicts in places like Brampton, where you have the Khalistanis and the Hindus engaging in like fighting in the streets. So it's escalating, and these are the issues, and that's why. And then you've got the assassination that took place here on Canadian soil. So this is playing out, and I think that generally most Canadians, unless you're from the Indian community, you don't understand the history and the politics that goes with that. Largely speaking, that's what I was getting at before, and so. They just lump all these people together because they don't understand.
I have seen that, not necessarily in this chat, but I have seen that, when I've been on other live streams on other channels. Somebody will refer to a group who could be possibly protesting in the street right now, with flags, and I'm not referring to the groups in Brampton, and they'll be talking about turbans, and I'm thinking, geez, why are you even equating turbans with Palestinians. Like, if that's the sort of thing you're referring to, I see that all the time in live streams. And it's blatant ignorance. If you want to speak to an issue, speak to an issue. Don't mix people up. Don't paint everybody with the same brush. There's all these different, issues. And people just kind of see it as one big blur. And it's not,
And it's so difficult in Canada because we have people from so many parts of the world, and the world is a really big place, and there's so much world history, and I don't know all the history from all the countries from all over the world, and so I'm constantly educating myself or trying to keep up, right? And so I've had to learn as much as I can about the history of India and the conflict between the Hindus and the Sikhs and the Khalistani movement, and I'm still not fully versed. I'm just trying to keep up.
Exactly. Oh, so are we all. But Rick, thank you. I just wanted to, do a quick call-in. Okay. Thank you.
I
for
appreciate you doing that because
do.
It sometimes as I'm just babbling here, it's not scripted, and sometimes maybe I say things that come off the wrong way or are misinterpreted, or maybe I'm not clear. So I appreciate you kind of holding my feet to the fire on that. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. And I will continue to enjoy your show. You have a good night, Rick.
You too.
Thank you. Okay, see you. Bye.
And the number to call if you want to join the conversation is 1-519-401-1373. And here's Ted Cruz saying he's establishing an official investigation now into Panama's violation of the Canal Treaty, which would give President Trump the green light to retake it by any means necessary. Noam Chomsky has a phrase that he coined, manufacturing consent. You make reasons, or you focus on things to manufacture public consent for a war, or in this case, maybe a takeover of the Panama Canal. I shouldn't even be laughing, but let's just go to this caller here. Go ahead, you're on the air.
My mayor?
You're on the air. Who's this?
It's John.
Hello, John.
Hey, Rick, I do love your show, but I gotta fight back on this un-American nonsense that you've been spewing.
Okay.
This anti-American bile. First of all, Canada, I looked it up. I can't remember the year, forgive me. It might have been last year, it may have been 2023. Canada runs a trade surplus with the United States by the billions. And the United States of America spends bazillions in defense. Well, obviously, I think that's not a technical term, but you know what I mean.
Okay, I'll accept it for the sake of this conversation.
They spend a ton of money, in defense that does benefit Canada. Now, I am not a supporter of America's foreign policy. I was against, and I'm not a pacifist. Okay, if war is necessary, I'm all for war. And there are times in history where war may have been necessary, but America's foreign policy since September 11th has been one of serving Israel, not the United States interests. Your buddy that you seem to love so much, your Israeli buddy, Netanyahu, he went before the U.S. Congress back when there was the lead up to the invasion of Iraq, and he lied to the U.S. Congress, and he said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. There were none. He said he was going to collude with Al Qaeda and give them weapons of mass destruction.
I thought we were talking about Canada and my so-called anti-American bile.
Well, this all feeds into it. So let me make this point. So Netanyahu Netanyahu, because your love for Israel, your misplaced love for Israel, which I don't know why you have that. I've been wanting to ask you, are you Jewish?
Nope.
Okay. You're a Protestant, though, right?
Well, my religion is kind of irrelevant, but you just keep going.
Well, I think there is a relevance, but okay, I would be very surprised if you were a Catholic.
I'm not a Catholic.
I think this feeds into the point of view that's coming out on the show. Your misplaced love of Israel. I mean, I love your show. You have a great show, and I love hearing the Canadian perspective. Like, you know, I think your show should be watched all over the United States, all over the world. I think just from a show's perspective, and I'm not just kicking your butt, I think you are an amazing broadcaster. And I think you're doing this by yourself. So obviously you're a professional. You're very good at what you do. And but the ideas coming out on the show where I had to watch the quit listen to you for a while because I got so disgusted with that American Zionist woman that you had on the show.
American Zionist woman.
Yeah, and that woman was just constantly, she was like your co-host for a while.
Oh, Lori.
And she was just,
Lori.
Yeah, she was just spewing that pro-Israel lies over and over in government. So the reason why that matters and why it's relevant to what I'm trying to say is this misplaced love you have for Israel, which is not your friend. Israel is Canada's enemy, and it's America's enemy. I think is kind of also a reasoning as to why you become so anti-American, in my opinion. Because, see,
I'm not anti-American. I'm not anti-American. I'm really not.
Well,
I'm super pro-America. I'm like mega super pro-America. I always have been.
If you were pro-America, you would support joining the American Union.
No, not necessarily. No.
Joining the American Union. Because that would be what's best for you and what's best for Canada. And
that's not necessarily true.
Well, the point I was trying to, I'll go into why. If you let me, I'll go into why, but in a moment. But the point I was trying to make was this, is that I was trying to make a point. I do not support America's foreign policy. I believe you're going to disagree with this, but American foreign policy is controlled by Jews. It's controlled by people who are willing to harm Americans in order to benefit the fanatical Likud party in Israel. And that's who controls America, and that's why America is having so many problems. That's why the world is having so many problems.
Well, Trump should be careful about echoing things when he's saying like clean out Gaza like he did this week. So that's not rhetoric that's helpful, I would say.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. I'm glad to hear that you say that. So you do think Palestinians have a right to be alive? Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Palestinians have a right. Okay, do they have a right to live in Palestine, in their homeland?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I've said from the very beginning, and you can go back and check the old archived shows. I said that what Netanyahu did after October 7th was a mistake. Shouldn't have gone in there the way he did.
I could have missed that. Maybe Lori just colored me too badly. If I misjudged you, sir, please, as a Christian, forgive me. I beg your forgiveness. But here's what I want to say. Yeah. Here's what I want to say about Canada and about the foreign policy. And yeah, Trump is a Zionist. Don't get me wrong. My biggest beef with Trump is that he's a Zionist. Okay? But of course he came out with a tweet that was anti Netanyahu recently, and that's why BB didn't come to the inauguration. And that's not much, but we'll take what we can get right now. But yeah, Trump is a total Zionist. His party is run by Zionists. So here's the point I'm trying to make. I am not for America's foreign policy, okay? I am not a pacifist. I'm not a vegan pacifist. I believe in war if it's truly necessary, okay? But these wars have not been necessary that America has been involved in 20 years, for the last 20 years. That even that being said, okay, there is a globalist agenda, and that globalist agenda, to a degree, does allow for a certain level of order. That order makes it so that Taiwan is not part of China right now. It also makes it so that Canada is not part of Russia right now. And the only reason Canada is able to stop a superpower like Russia from either economically or frankly militarily subverting you, which they could in a heartbeat, is because you have the giant next door, the United States of America, who Russia knows will slaughter them on sight if they even look twice at Canada. So the point I'm trying to make is this. Canadians get American car companies, and they are American car companies. When Trump lowers the tax rate and starts bringing these companies home, they're going to start coming back to Detroit. Canada is taking away jobs from Americans. You run a trade surplus. I've seen in your chat, and I like people in your chat, and I learn from them, but I've seen people in your chat, just like who I'm assuming are Canadian, but also I've heard this same point made by Europeans, where they've kind of, well, the Europeans do it more, so the Canadian guy wasn't really doing this, but you mentioned the fact that you guys have these benefits that they don't have in America, like free healthcare. Well, that's not really true. It depends on what state you're in. There are ways that people can get free healthcare in America. No one goes without healthcare in America. I'm not saying that the system here is great, but I'm not saying your system is great either. But the reason why Europeans and Canadians have things like free healthcare, and I believe you guys have free college too, the reason why you have things like that is because you don't have to spend on defense. Because
it's not free.
Okay. Well,
college and university is not free. Right? You know, a lot of healthcare is sort of free. There are fees involved. When I listen to economists like Richard Wolff, he makes broad sweeping statements that are not entirely accurate. And you know, we do have a socialized healthcare system, but those are all broader issues that require, you know, more in-depth discussion on their own, really.
Well, the point I would make, though, is that the reason why you have, in effect, I mean, healthcare is expensive no matter where you're at. I think it's more expensive in America for a lot of artificial reasons, and there's a lot of corruption here. But healthcare is expensive no matter where you're at. There's no such thing as free healthcare. But the reason why you have subsidized healthcare, or you have healthcare that's reasonably priced up front, as far as the regular end user the regular user is concerned, is because America, you are a client state of America. And while Americans have to work 2-3 jobs to be able to afford things that are subsidized for you, and while American jobs, like Ford is making cars in Canada, Ford should not be making cars in Canada. They should be making them in Detroit. All these things that you benefit from, and Europe, and not just Canada, not just blaming Canada, Europeans benefit from too, with a relationship with America, where America is on the losing end, and the rest of the world is on the winning end. And Americans recognize that. And what Trump is doing is he's tapping into a kind of anger that Americans have, that they are doing all this work. It's Americans who are spending the majority of money. It's Americans who are spending the majority of blood in these wars, these globalist wars, which I do not support, like I said, but I do believe they do create a kind of order in the world that we all benefit from. It's Americans who are sacrificing the most, and they're getting the least. That is why what Trump is saying is popular. That's why what Trump is saying is popular. Yes.
You've said a whole awful lot there, and so you see Canada as ripping off the United States because we have some auto factories here.
Not you, the individual Canadian. I love Canadians, all right, but I love Canadian beer, you know. But and I love Canadian people. They're Canadians. Don't be offended. They're basically like American Midwesterners. You know, you're like exact. I grew up in the American Midwest. I understand you Canadians a lot more than you think I do, and yeah. But I do think the people that run your country.
Do you know? Like we've had the auto industry here in Canada since the creation of the automobile. It's been a cross-border coexistence from the beginning, since since the Model T. And Henry Ford and Fordtown and Windsor, Detroit, two cities working together over time. Detroit, the bigger player because it's the U.S. market, but you don't see that there's a mutually beneficial arrangement there that benefits both sides.
Let me ask you: was Henry Ford an American or a Canadian?
He was an American, but he used to go over and visit, people like Jack Miner, who I'm actually related to, and he was a conservationist, and he had ties to Canada and to Windsor and investments over there, and by having some manufacturing on the Canadian side, it also opened up the Canadian market so that you've got Canadian consumers buying the vehicles that were produced on both sides of the border. And we buy cars from the U.S. and you buy cars that are manufactured over here too. And parts and these industries that we have are, benefit both sides. So we buy from you and you buy from us. And the only reason, do you know what? Do you know the actual size of the trade deficit?
What is it?
You tell me. You said you looked it up.
Well, no, I looked at the surplus, and it was, I don't remember the exact number, but it was in the Canadian surplus with America was in the billions, and I think it was for 2023.
Okay.
And I don't think that was a one-off.
And what did Trump say? What's Trump saying?
Well,
250 billion.
250 billion? Okay, well, there you go.
That's not true, though.
There you go.
He's lying. It's a lie.
Okay.
Prove
it's a lie.
It's 40 billion, and those are the stats, and I showed all of that on the program last night. I've been saying that from the very beginning, because as soon as he said that, I knew instantly it wasn't true, because I know the business end of it. And Canada doesn't have that size of a trade surplus on our side with the United States, and a trade deficit on your side. It's not even close to accurate, not even remotely in the realm of reality. We have between 40 and 60 billion a year, and if you were to take oil and gas out of that, the United States would have a trade surplus with us, because 36 U.S. states, we actually are your largest customer for 36 out of your 50 states.
And how much in dollars does Canada benefit from the defense spending that America spends?
Well, you're lucky. You're actually kind of lucky with. You're
using that.
Well, we are a smaller country. You're 10 times larger, and you know what we do? We don't charge you any rent for the NORAD bases that you have up in the Arctic, so that you have early warning in case Russia decides to launch missiles at you. And we're quite happy to provide the access, even though it's our sovereign territory. And thank you for partnering with us, because we're an ally, and we again have a mutually beneficial arrangement there. It's not a zero-sum game. We're both helping each other.
Even with that, I don't think if we tallied up what Americans are spending on defense and what Canadians are spending on defense, I don't think it's even in the same stratosphere. And Rick, America has a right to its national sovereignty. Whether Canada likes it or not, we are going to have those early warning systems there. You understand? You guys are not going to dictate to the United States of America.
You see, and therein lies the rub, you see. And so you don't want any kind of power sitting on your border. And I understand this, but this is also what you need to understand in a more nuanced way, I think, is that Canada can't pose a threat to the United States, so we're not really allowed to.
No, it can't. It certainly can't. It certainly can't. For instance, the things that you've been talking about, where you've been talking about going to BRICS, you've been talking about opening up Canada to other nations, that kind of thing. And I know that you were also talking about with I'm going to say his name wrong. I apologize. Poilievre and what Trudeau's been talking
I know nobody
about.
can pronounce his name. Yeah.
I got to learn French. French is beautiful. The French are beautiful, wonderful, amazing people. I would support America. Americans being forced to learn French and making French our national language, because the French were very instrumental in founding America.
But you just, but this is the thing. Like you're saying that if we trade with other nations, then that becomes a threat to the United States. But we're not allowed to participate in the U.S. economy because you want your auto plants back, which is, been a mutually beneficial economic arrangement between both countries that we both benefit from over time. So you don't want us to have anything, but you don't want us to trade with anybody else.
It's not beneficial to those auto workers in Detroit. The jobs are in Canada, not in Detroit.
No, that's not. No, that's actually not true. And if you look at the trade agreements that have been in place, from the original Auto Pact to then NAFTA and then the USMCA and now whatever is going to come after that, it's a proportional trade thing. And so you're also gaining access to the Canadian market. And so we're buying stuff from you and you're buying stuff from us. And it's not just about the cars. It's about all the different industries and the things that we trade in back and forth. And even Henry Ford himself, if you go back, he was of the mind and that if you're going to have, say, a worker working in a factory, that worker should make enough to buy the product that they're producing. So Henry Ford paid above market rates in order for people who are working for him, he would be able to actually afford to buy the cars. And by doing that, he generated a market. And so it's worked well, actually, both sides over time. And me working in part as an automotive journalist for many years, I remember going to automotive conferences and the North American International Auto Show and listening to the auto executives. And they always said, that they basically treated Canada and the U.S. as one auto market. And so then on the flip side, you're saying that we should just join the American Union. And that in itself would then mean that we're going to keep those auto plants up here. So which way is it? You keep flipping it upside down as though we're some adversary or that there's some negative side to us trading with you on a fair basis. And that's why we have these trade agreements in place.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
It's not fair. In what way?
I disagree that it's fair. In the way I said, the surplus. I don't agree with what you're saying that Trump's numbers are wrong.
Well, you go do the research and you bring it back and show me.
It's probably more than $250 billion.
It's not. You can have. You're welcome. You're welcome to your opinion. So what? So you want your plant? You want your auto?
Not being Chinese, Rick.
So you want your auto plant? So you guys trade with China a whole lot too. Okay, every country does. You trade with China way more than we do, and you've got
right.
All right. So don't pin that on us, and don't then sit there and tell me that we have to give up any part of our manufacturing base, and in order to just repatriate your jobs, and then tell us that we can't trade with other countries because what are we supposed to do? Live in poverty or be enslaved to you?
No. It's the Canadian oligarchs who have led Canadians into poverty, Rick. It's Canadians now. Young Canadians cannot afford homes. Okay? After the trucker convoy thing happened, I started paying attention to Canada like never before. America is a basket case, but Canada is not being run well. Okay? I want a future where Canadians are rich Canadians, and by rich I mean working middle class, they can afford homes, and I want that for Americans too. I want a partnership too, but I disagree with you that what we have right now is the way you kind of express it every night, that Canada does all these great things for America. No, it doesn't. And here's the thing with China. China is not a martial empire. It's been around for thousands of years, but it almost never gets itself involved
You tell us, sir, who are we allowed to trade with? Who are you going to let us trade with?
Well, hold on. Let me make a point about China. So with China is not a martial empire. They almost never grow their empire through military means. They always, and for thousands of years, have conducted economic warfare on their enemies. So, for instance, if Canada starts opening itself up to China, okay, that is a national security threat to America. But that's also a national security threat to you. If you think for 1 second the Red Chinese or the Russians are going to be fair to Canadians, I got another thing coming for you, Rick.
Well,
Rick,
excuse me, but I don't think a 25% tariff on everything we sell to you guys is fair.
Well, I said before in the chat that I think.
And China's not threatening that with us. No other country's doing that to us. There's one guy who just came out of the blue and just decided that the trade deal that he negotiated, like the USMCA, the last time he was in office, he decided that, no, we don't like that anymore, so screw that. No, we're not going to honor that agreement. And in fact, even before we sit down to negotiate, I'm just going to slap a 25% tariff on you, on everything coming from your country.
So if America didn't exist and China had the relationship with Canada that America now holds, do you think the Chinese are going to treat you fairly, Rick? Do you think Canada's sovereignty?
Actually, I'll share this with you. Let me share this with you. I've owned businesses. I have, as part of all of this, a business. And part of that business has been to import some goods from other countries. And I'll tell you this, I've dealt with the Chinese, and they have been nothing but fair and excellent to deal with. I've had no issues.
Oh, so so the Red Chinese, Canada's going to hitch its wagon to China, and that's the future, huh, Rick?
I'm just telling you that's been my experience. Like I've never been screwed. They've never been dishonest. And I'll tell you this, I'd rather do business with the USA. I love the United States, and I've always been very pro-American.
Why do you business with the USA? The Chinese are so wonderful.
Because the products that I needed were not available from either Canada or the USA. So you go where you can get them. But I've had no issues. I don't deal like a lot with China, but I've had like zero problems. In fact, they're more capitalistic in many respects than the United States is, and Canada for that matter.
Well, capitalism is degenerate Protestant and Jewish invention. It's state-sponsored.
Well, they're more free market. Like, I don't know. So what economic system do you advocate for then, Mr. USA?
There's a gentleman by the name of E. Michael Jones who wrote a book called Barren Metal. And I suggest reading that book. And that book is, he's citing, he didn't come up with the theory. He's citing the theory of a Catholic economist whose name escapes me. And in the book, he makes the argument that what we refer to as capitalism, and I believe he's right, is actually an outgrowth of the Protestant Revolution. This is why I was asking if you're a Protestant earlier. Because if you were talking about history earlier, if you don't understand history, you're not going to understand what's going on.
If you want to talk economics, we can talk economics. But, and then we can get into definitions of what capitalism is and free markets and so on. But we're getting off into the weeds here a little bit.
I am not a communist. I'm not a communist, and I believe in private property and hard work. How about that? I just disagree that what I just said is an honest trading between people. But I just disagree what I just said is the description of capitalism. Capitalists will say that's what it is, but it's not. It's
how do you just define capitalism for me then?
State-sponsored usury, a mortal sin.
State-sponsored usury?
Jewish and Protestant.
State-sponsored usury?
State-sponsored usury. And usury is a sin.
That's interest. That's interest. Usury is interest. Charging of interest.
Read the book Barren Metal. It'll elucidate a lot much more. Well,
I studied economics in university. I know what usury is.
Yeah, it's the commie-run universities where they teach
Commie
Jewish
universities.
lies.
This is the. I'm actually an advocate for the opposite of communism. I'm very much an Adam Smith guy.
Yeah, that's why I said communism. Capitalism, Adam Smith is just the Western half of Jewish communism. Okay, capitalism and communism are just two
The
sides.
invisible
of the same coin.
hand is communism.
Yes, Adam Smith is Adam Smith.
What are you reading, man?
Read Barren Metal. It'll elucidate a lot more than I can right here. And I do want to talk about that, but that's a whole topic in and of itself. But
Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, is a communist.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think you know what? You're down the Jew rabbit hole a little too deep, my friend.
Well, look it up and read the book Barren Metal.
I know where you're going, and you are so far off base, and your definitions are so skewed. And I'm sorry, but let's. I don't want to We're veering off into all these different areas. This is like conspiracy land now. So let's get back to reality. We were talking about Canada. So before you guys send your military up here and invade us, is there anything else you want me to talk about tonight with regard to that particular topic?
Well, no, I don't want the military, the American military, to go to Canada.
Well, that's where we're going. I've got another call coming in, so I got to jump off before this guy leaves, okay? But call back another time. I appreciate the call.
All right.
Hello, who's on the line?
Hello, this is Raphael.
Raphael, welcome back, my friend. Are you gonna call me a communist tonight?
No, Ricky. As a matter of fact, I am supporting you in your argument.
Thank you.
Because I believe, this guy, I don't think he understands Canada, because with 30 million people, Canada is a G7 number. It is a G7 member. This is not an easy thing to do. This is big time. 30 million people, and we are a G7 nation. And one thing this guy does not understand, why Trump is trying to, is so gung-ho about taking over Canada. Canada has 20% of the world's fresh water. Canada has.
Yeah.
The United States only have 12. And the United States is having, in the next war, the next big war that's going to fight, is going to be about water, with that climate, with the climate change.
Yeah.
So Canada has something. People don't understand what Canada has. I mean, Canada is big time on everything, like the mineral, the resources, natural resources. I mean, it's big time. People do not understand why people want Canada. It just so happens that Canadians did not know that big plan the United States has, when they take countries, break them down, they call that balkanize.
Yeah.
They balkanize them so they can take over the resources. And that's what they were trying to do with Russia. But it just so happened that in reality, when you are dealing with the devil doesn't really care about who you are. You can never be friends with the devil, because sometimes it will come out and you too, you will perish. Because the Canadians thought they were safe. They could never imagine that wherever the United States go, they go. World War I, they lost 60,000 people. The United States lost 100,000, but the Canadian was right there with them. World War II, they lost another 50,000. So that means no matter where you go, even in Korea, that the Canadians have nothing to do with Korea. But because the United States, they went along with, they end up losing another close to 20,000. So these people, they always get along going well, go with the United States, be their companions, and then that's why they are so disappointed now. Like today, we instead and want to cannibalize them. And they cannot understand that. And I think we're going to pay dearly for that. Take through.
Yeah. Raphael, thank you for the call, man. You hit the nail on several heads, or several nails on the head. And, yeah. In fact, tonight Trump was posting something on Truth Social about turning on the tap for the water to go to California. And, a lot of that water flows from British Columbia. They're looking at water. They need the water, not just for fire suppression or firefighting. They need it for agriculture all through California. And we have international water agreements. And we do, happily provide access to our water resources for the United States in many ways. It's always been a mutually beneficial arrangement. We've been great neighbors. World's longest undefended border, which is something that both sides had always been proud of. Things are changing. Things certainly changed after 9/11. But there's no need for this. And if you want a renegotiated trade deal, we were going to do that anyway. We were going to sit down and have discussions about the USMCA. But then even before we could get that far, just bam, I'm going to tariff you for 25%. And it isn't even really clear why. Like, what does he want? Well, secure your border. Well, we're working on that. We're going to do that. We've started to address that. But even that isn't really what it's about. It's exactly what I said. And it's what that caller just confirmed. They want the auto industry. He wants the auto plants. The auto industry has been part of Canada from the beginning of the auto industry. It's been a cross-border industry, like since the beginning, like since the invention of the car and Henry Ford's development of the assembly line. Model Ts made on both sides of the Detroit River. And now what? You just want all the auto plants. You just want them all. Oh, really? Okay, well, then I guess we're going to have to do something else for a living. And we will. And maybe we'll keep our auto plants. And maybe instead of, trading back and forth with the U.S., maybe the cars we make we'll have to send to Germany and back, or England. They have factories there too. We have to survive. What do you want us to do? Like every other place, man. And you subsidize us, I guess, is what the idea is here. It sounds to me, since you now have the external revenue service that's being established, and Trump saying that he's going to do away with income tax because he's going to collect money from all the other countries in the world so that you guys don't have to pay income tax. And we don't have free college and university here. People pay. And we have student loans that the government backs up for people, guarantees, but you have to pay that back. It's not entirely free. Not even close, actually. It's expensive to go to university and college. High school, elementary school, yeah, they have public schools for that. And private schools if you want to pay. There's a choice. And why do I want Canada to survive as a sovereign nation? Because we are different in many ways. And always have been. And our approach to dealing with problems has always been somewhat different. Our Constitution, such as it is not written in blood in the same way that the U.S. Constitution is. It wasn't forged out of war, is what I'm saying. As your independence came to be, where you went to war for it. We didn't do that. We evolved as a country over time, and instead of conquering, we compromised. We're different. Our history is different. And Canadians, and we talked about whether Canadians understand or know history, well, largely, Canadians don't know a lot of history. And you know why? because of U.S. influence, U.S. television, U.S. media. Because we're constantly bombarded with American news, American politics, and people get it mixed up in their heads. And we learn about both systems to some degree, and then people kind of get it all jumbled up, and we don't really understand even how our own systems work as a result. That's also why we've been protective on some fronts, like media, because we want people to we want to be able to access Canadian news so we know what's going on in our communities. And so, yeah, there has been some protectionism on those fronts, things like television, radio, media, and it's becoming more difficult to address issues of local news coverage, journalism, in the face of changing technologies and social media. But it's always been a challenge for Canada because we're this vast country with a population that is spread out over, some condensed kind of down into southern Ontario, but then spread out into the Arctic. And how do you provide adequate news coverage and proper service to people, not just for media and news, but even healthcare services and things like that, and make sure that people have an adequate standard of living, even when they live in remote areas. You go work in a mine up in northern Ontario so that you can supply, I don't know, say lime or nickel or uranium for your nuclear weapons and power plants in the United States. Canada supplies that, and we have people working in remote locations in order to provide those things to our American ally and friend. But people live up there, and we have to find ways to make sure that they have adequate health care and social services in the communities in which they live, that they have a family doctor. And a lot of times doctors don't want to move up to those communities. So we have our own set of problems up here. And in order to provide the uranium that you need in the United States, so you don't have to buy it from maybe adversarial countries and be reliant on them for critical minerals that support not just your economy, but your actual military. We have people who make great sacrifices every day going to work in frigid temperatures in the far north. Yeah, we sacrifice too. And we did during World War I. A lot of blood was spilled alongside our allies, including Americans. And in World War II. And just because we're smaller and we don't have a population as large as yours, we pull our weight, and always have. And sometimes when it's been critical, we stand up to you too, because sometimes you make mistakes. And sometimes when you went to war in Iraq, we didn't just follow blindly. No, we had debates about it in our House of Commons. One side wanted to support you almost blindly, frankly. And the other side, the government of the day, said, no, this doesn't seem right. And we're only going to take on a supporting role. We're not going to be actively involved in what's going on in Iraq. And we had the courage to stand up to you, even though you're Godzilla. And you can stamp us out with the blink of an eye or just with one stomp. And we understand that. And we are tied to you, and always have been. Happily so, even though we know that if your economy catches a cold, we get the freaking flu. Maybe even pneumonia. Because what goes on in the U.S. is amplified tenfold up here. And it hasn't always been a bed of roses with our auto industry either. Just like you, we've seen the erosion of the middle class. Because the jobs that you lost to other countries, because they were outsourced to other countries, where labor laws were more lenient and wages were lower, we experienced the exact same thing over here, and we suffered together. And we continue to do so today. The auto industry in Canada is not what it once was. Trust me on that. And right now, it's overextended, my friend. And I appreciate the call very much. But your facts, your stats, your numbers. They're a little bit skewed because you've been listening a little too much to Mr. Trump, who tends to exaggerate things and even sometimes make things up simply to put a better spin on his story for a stronger argument going into what he would characterize as negotiations. Others would characterize, in this particular case, as coercion. But our auto industry is not what it once was, and we're doing our best to save it in cooperation with the United States. And that is why our government has been investing our tax dollars to the tune of billions of dollars to electrify the auto industry, just like you on your side, pushing towards some sort of a future for the auto industry and also trying to navigate this in a way that satisfies real market demands. And if you want to know how that all works, then go look up Adam Smith and read his works. That's not communism. That's all about the free market. And the free market is what it's all about. And we don't really have the free market. And certainly it doesn't sound like Donald Trump is engaging in free market practices right now. Not when he's telling Saudi Arabia that they need to adjust production of oil in order to crash the price on the world market. That's market manipulation, not a response to supply and demand. And that's coming from one guy, Donald Trump, who at the moment seems to want to control the entire world, not just make America great again, or maybe he's trying to make America great again at the expense of all of his allies and his enemies, treating both in really much the same fashion. It makes no sense. Because the truth of the matter is, America has been great and has benefited more than anyone from the alliances that it has had over time since World War II. Cooperation, working together, both economically and militarily. And why? Because the United States had the nukes and the largest amount of power. And we allowed and agreed collectively, as all these nations of the world, to allow the United States to be the dominant power and to have the world reserve currency, propped up not just by oil, but by the U.S. military. It's not a petrodollar, it's a military dollar. People call it a petrodollar because oil is traded in U.S. dollars because of Saudi Arabia, but that's only underpinned and backed up because the United States has provided military security for Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. And around the world, the United States has therefore had an obligation to provide protection for smaller, weaker countries who also contribute back to the United States. But we're not all that weak. There are countries that are still very strong within NATO, and they will be stronger again. And Trump is actually, I think, facilitating that and demanding that countries ramp up their NATO spending, and rightly so. And the UK will become stronger. They see the need, and NATO countries are ramping up their efforts in that regard because they see an actual threat in Russia. But all of this is really beginning to become skewed and gray and distorted because of Trump's actions right now. And it's very difficult to see very clearly who's an ally and who's an adversary at this point because he's attacking everyone. And you don't treat friends like an enemy because then you're viewed as just being a bully. And he doesn't need to do that in order to get what he wants. A little diplomacy would go a long way and would actually foster better relations heading into the future, and that would actually make sure that America remains great into the future. But what he's doing right now, he's pushing all of these countries away, including Canada. We don't want to. We don't want to be pushed away. We've always wanted to be fully integrated with our economy, with the United States, and trade fairly back and forth. And that is what we have always strived to do. And among all the countries in the world, your biggest trading partners, if you look at the actual numbers, and we laid some of them out here last night, we have been one of your fairest trading partners. We buy a lot from the United States and will continue to do so. As I indicated, 36 U.S. states 36. We're their biggest customers. But if you start a trade war, and it's not us starting it, we didn't start the trade war. You start a trade war, what are we going to do? We're going to defend ourselves just like any other country would, just like Mexico will, just like Colombia tried to in some bizarre way. That's kind of a different scenario, but I'm not even sure how the immigration thing is ultimately going to play out here, because it looks like Trump is going to be pushing asylum seekers up here toward the Canada-U.S. border, and we're going to have to deal with your problem. And he's making the U.S. border our responsibility? Secure your own damn border. That's what I say. We'll take care of our side. You take care of yours. We'll also address any national security concerns that we mutually share, because we don't want foreign infiltration in our government either. And clearly we have some, but so do you. You've got the same kinds of problems, amplified times 10, maybe 100. And you complain, or you're concerned about certain groups of people out protesting in the streets and chanting death to Canada, death to America on the Canadian side. You've got the same kinds of people doing the same damn things in the USA. And it's something that we share back and forth together. But you blame all that on the Jews. The Jews are not the problem. They're just part of it all. It's all complicated. It's all interwoven. And there's a lot of history there all the way around. No way for anybody to know all of it, because there's a lot to know. But I just know this. I'm not anti-American. I remember going down to Cuba one time on vacation. You guys can't go. I, as a Canadian, can go to Cuba, and I went to Cuba. And the minute I got off the airplane, I was turned right off, because as I'm walking through the airport, they've got, the different stores in the airport, and they've got all these books, and they're all anti-American propaganda books. The entire time I'm there, they had whole channels devoted to anti-American propaganda, running 24/7 on the television in the room at the resort. I'll tell you, I went out to meet the people, and I found, that is a communist country, and I didn't like what I found there, because, well, the people were very happy and super friendly, and I liked the people very much. I also saw that there was a great division, a great divide between the rich and the poor. I guess there is in every country and in every system to some degree, but I believe in free markets, and I believe in free market capitalism, because as it has been used in Western society, in free countries, liberal democracies, and I mean liberal in the classical liberal sense, not the Liberal Party, but we've raised more people out of poverty than any other system in history around the world, because it's been mutually beneficial between all the countries involved. But a lot of people want to tear that down, and they twist your minds, and they're telling you, gotta get rid of that. That's all corrupt. It doesn't work. Well, it has worked for a very long time, and extremely well, to the point where people have become complacent and self-flagellating. It's been so good that people think it can't ever go away somehow. But it can, and it's being abused right now. And Donald Trump, he's not engaging in free market capitalism. What he's doing right now, this is, I guess on the one hand, you could argue that because the United States has grown so powerful and rich over time, even though you owe, $37 trillion in debt, even there, I'm not as concerned as a lot of people, because that's on a global scale, because the United States is a global country. You are the globalists. You are. Even inadvertently and unintentionally, you're the globalists. The United States is the globalist nation. because you dominate everything. But the reason you are as powerful as you are is because of your alliances with NATO countries, with European countries, with other liberal democracies. We benefit each other. But what this is doing is it's tearing it apart. So yeah, you can lose it, and we are losing it. Because what he's doing is misguided. And I don't want to lose my country. I want my sovereignty, and we do deserve to exist as a separate country because we've earned it. Oh yeah, we have. Now, we're not as big and we're not as powerful as the United States, but there's a reason for that, and that is because we can't really pose an actual existential threat to the United States because you're paranoid and think that anybody that might be strong sitting next to you might someday become a threat. I get it. That's why, people point to the Avro Arrow, the fighter jet that was developed back in like the 60s, state of the art. You know why that wasn't actually really built in Canada? Why the plug was pulled on that? Because you guys. Because you don't really want us to have military manufacturing capacity up here, and you didn't want us to really have a state-of-the-art fighter jet that exceeded the specifications of anything being built on the U.S. side. And so it was scrapped. They were cut up into pieces. And we were going to share that with you and make it available to you. Share it back and forth. But ultimately, that's what it came down to. And that's something that isn't really talked about a whole lot because it's maybe just a little uncomfortable to talk about. But if you're going to cut us off and say we're going to take your auto industry and then we're going to maybe carve out your oil somehow or whatever it is that he wants, if he just wants all the manufacturing back and he wants to hollow out the Canadian economy so that we subsidize your population to the tune where you don't have to pay income tax anymore, you don't have to pay any taxes, so you get free stuff so that what, you're going to enslave us? Is that the argument? And then tell us you're not allowed to trade with China. You're not allowed to trade with any other countries because that would present also a threat to the United States. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to sit back, and Canadians are not going to sit back and accept that because we need to eat. And we won't be abused, and you don't need to abuse us. Nor do I want to bend the knee and let you take us over. Unacceptable. And unnecessary. Why? And maybe you don't like the policies that a given government of the day in Canada enacts. Maybe you don't like it. It's not your damn business. That's our problem. I don't much care for Justin Trudeau. He's on the way out. There's going to be an election. We'll have a changing of the guard at some point, and hopefully a change in policies. And these are things that we have to deal with too. And you just came off a pretty progressive presidency. You had a pretty progressive left-wing socialistic government in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Things change over time. Trump's coming now, but he'll be going someday. Not sure when, but he'll be going to. And things change up here. Political attitudes change. And I don't want to sell out my country for a tax break offered up by a president who's only going to be around maybe 4 years, or he's talking about maybe another term, maybe another 8, just change the rules. Or maybe until he dies. I don't know if there's any merit to that paranoia or not. He should only be there for 4 years. And then I don't know what we get. Maybe people will get fed up with him in the next 4 years. And maybe we'll end up with a Democrat government again. Who knows? I have no crystal ball. I cannot predict. I just know this. I love the United States. I'm not anti-American. I'm very, very, very pro-America. But I'm not pro this. And I was very optimistic and pretty pro-Trump especially during his first term. And I thought he kind of got derailed, halfway through by the pandemic and all the lawfare launched at him. And I always did view him as something of a victim. But Trump 2.0, this is different. And even when I look back at Trump 1.0, I see the warning signs even there, because the problems that emerged during Trump 1.0, the pandemic, the lockdowns, the masks, the mandates, all that we experienced here in Canada, you also had down there in the USA. And you talk about the Freedom Convoy and so on. That was just one aspect of the whole thing. But you had the same problems, the exact same problems, and in some cases on the same scale or maybe even bigger in places like New York, in certain states like that. So you're not immune. You're not better. We had the problem here, you had the problem there. You've got we share a lot of these similar problems. And you've got a lot more problems on your side in many respects than we have up here. And I don't really want your problems. We've got enough of our own problems to deal with here. It's not perfect up here. And we got to change a lot of things. And we will. We're working on it. And we're always going to be working on it because it's never perfect and you've always got problems. And that's the way democracy works. That's the way free societies work. That's the way every society works. You're always working on it because you always have people in need. And you always have to work for what you have. So it continues. But you don't need to bully us and beat us into submission. We're your friends. We're your neighbor. We're your ally. This isn't normal. Things were sure as hell not normal when he was president before. It felt like things are starting to get back to normal, and now here we are, and things are very not normal again suddenly. And now my radar is up, and I'm like, wait a minute. This isn't what we were talking about. This isn't what we were promised. This isn't what anybody was expecting. Not really. Not unless you get the inside dope. There's something seriously wrong. Seriously, seriously wrong. Enough for tonight. I love you guys. And I love the USA. I mean, here I am. I've been sitting here defending the crap out of the United States, making, Maverick and the News Brothers, we created Bring Back America. Song, video that we run here sometimes at night because I love America. I just don't want you to beat the crap out of us. And I don't want to be invaded. I don't want to be taken over. I don't want to be assimilated. I want to live together in peace. Let's prosper together. Let's grow together. Let's make it better. Not by hurting people. Let's bring back America. An America that lives up to the ideals of that shining city on a hill. See you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. On the flip side, and thanks for all those calls tonight. And thanks for holding my feet to the fire, too.
Down in the heart of Dixie, where the rivers meet the land, there's a whisper on the wind, a call to take a stand. We're rolling out of town with our boots up on the floor, searching for the freedom that we've been longing for. We're riding on the open road with the stars as a guide, restoring pride in America with every mile we ride. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, why we fall. We're saving America, bringing freedom back home. Got my guitar in the back and a flag flying high. We're singing songs of glory under the big old sky. From the south to the north, from the east to the west, we're on a mission to put our nation to the test. We're riding on the open road with the stars as a guide, restoring pride in America with every mile we ride. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, why we fall. We're saving America, bringing freedom back home. There's a fire in our hearts, a flame that won't die. We're the sons and daughters of the red, white, and sky. With every mile we travel, with our boots up on the floor, we're healing the land and making freedom ring. We've seen the cities, we've felt the country's pain, but we're not giving up, we've got so much to gain. With our hands on the wheel and our eyes on the prize, we're gonna lift this nation back to the skies. We're riding on the open road with the stars as a guide, restoring pride in America with every mile we ride. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, why we fall. We're saving America, bringing freedom back home. So here's to the journey, here's to the fight, for the land of the free and the home of the light. With our boots on the ground and our hearts in the sky, we'll keep on rolling till freedom never dies. To the journey, here's to the fight, for the land of the free and the home of the light. With our boots on the ground and our hearts in the sky, we'll keep on rolling till freedom never dies. We're riding on the open road with the stars as our guide, restoring pride in America with every mile we ride. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, why we fall. We're saving America, bringing freedom back home. We're healing never dies, we're healing never dies.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.